Yes.
The Kuwaiti Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1539 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news out of Ukraine and Iran, as always. We have heard major news that apparently Iran has attempted to invade Kuwait's Persian Gulf oil facilities on one of the nearby coastal islands. In a wild move, by the way. Thankfully, it got repelled. We've also seen that Gulf states have been reportedly launching secret attacks on Iran in the midst of the ceasefire. And also, Ukraine has launched brand new attacks after the other ceasefire came to an end on Russia, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments in every corner of the globe. Over the past 24 hours, the Army of Kuwait has reported that the Islamic Republic of Iran attempted an amphibious landing and an armed invasion/raid of the major Bubiyan island within the northern area of the Kingdom of Kuwait. This attack was repelled, with one Kuwaiti soldier being injured in the midst of the firefight, and the Kuwaiti government has publicly stated that the attack was conducted by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they condemn this blatant violation of sovereignty and an attempt to exert armed force against the territory of the Kingdom of Kuwait by the strongest of circumstances. We also believe that this may be leading Kuwait to prepare for future strikes of their own against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The reasoning behind that belief is that the Saudi Arabians and the United Arab Emirates have now been found out to have been conducting secret strikes and attacks on the Islamic Republic of Iran, not only during the armed phase of the conflict from the latter part of February to the very end of March and on into the earlier part of April, but were even conducting armed attacks and strikes even recently after the ceasefire had gone into effect. We are now starting to hear further indications that attacks may be ongoing at this moment right now by the United Arab Emirates, and some of these explosions and fires and air defense fires that we're seeing inside of Iran may be due to UAE drones flying deep into the country and conducting strikes against infrastructure and targets that the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis believe are necessary targets to hit for their national security. In the midst of this all, we have been able to hear that the blockade is continuing within the Strait of Hormuz, and the Islamic Republic of Iran has made made it clear through every circumstance that they still are demanding an unconditional surrender by the United States of America to even attempt an opening of the Strait of Hormuz. We have also been able to see that 12 fast attack boats appear to have been destroyed near to the coast and around the cities of Kolahi and Shankar today, most likely by U.S. forces. We have also been able to see that the ships that were attacked by the United States near to the area of Bandar Larak are still on fire at this moment, just outside of Bandar Abbas, and are continuing to boil at this moment. We've also been able to hear that the President of the United States, when asked today about the ongoing economic calamities that are now afflicting the United States of America due to the ongoing blockade inside the Strait of Hormuz, and whether or not that is affecting the negotiating position by the United States of America, the President stated that he did not care about the economic position of the common American citizen, and that they would continue on with their military objectives in their current form, and will not change their war plans to take into consideration the worsening economic situation on the home front due to the continuation of the blockade and the possible long-term continuation of it due to a lack of aggressive military action. We've also been able to hear outside of that news that there has been confirmation by the U.S. ambassador to Israel that the Israelis did send some of their Iron Dome air defense systems to the United Arab Emirates to be able to help defend the area. And we've also been able to hear of explosions within the area of Sana'a in western Yemen, well within the Houthi lands. We've also heard reports that the President of the United States is on his way right now to the People's Republic of China for the long-awaited meeting with Xi Jinping, which will start tomorrow on Wednesday. And we are expecting that the President's aircraft will be arriving in Beijing most likely within the next several hours. In the midst of this, the Ukrainian armed forces have also resumed their major attacks against the Russian Federation's armed forces throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation and the occupied territories, causing significant damage to the Russian army and also ensuring that they are still making absolutely no ground inside of Ukraine. In the midst of this, a Kremlin did catch on fire in Moscow, but it is not the famed Russian Red Kremlin near to Red Square. It is actually a tourist Kremlin on the outskirts of the city. It appears that it is an ongoing tourist trap fire, and outside of that, there's been no strategic impact, but we will be covering it considering that it dominated headlines today. The Russian Federation also announced that they plan on making their Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missiles operational by the end of this year and putting them into service with their strategic nuclear forces. It also appears that NATO has had to respond to a possible Russian attempt to exert significant armed control over the entirety of the Baltic Sea after it's been noted that several Russian destroyers have been sitting at key locations throughout the area over the past several days, particularly over the last weekend. The British have also stated that they'll be committing resources to the Hormuz mission to attempt reopening it in the future, and we've also seen that the United States and Austria have actually gotten into an armed standoff over the prior days as several U.S. aircraft attempted to fly through Austrian airspace without their permission, violating the constitutional neutrality of the Republic of Austria, or as it's called in German, the Österreich. We've also been able to hear that the Ursa Major, which was a vessel that sank in late 2024, which we did cover here on this channel, may have been carrying nuclear reactors to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. This information has been dominating headlines as well today, but crazily enough, we actually covered all of this 2 years ago when it happened. It just appears that the mainstream news finally woke up and started covering it, so we're going to have to touch up on it again today and recover the story 2 years later. We have also been able to hear as well within the United States of America that inflation is on the rise, and we've also been able to hear that indictments have been made against some of the crew of the vessel that rammed into and destroyed the Francis Scott Key Bridge, as it appears that the U.S. government is now alleging conspiracy and acts of sabotage against the crew. We've also heard of other major developments around the world, but of course we're going to be making sure to get into all of this, starting with our largest stories first and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And before we can even get to the largest story of the day right now, we have breaking news coming out live on air at this moment. And so Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so right now, our earliest breaking news we have here on the stream is we've just learned that apparently the U.S. Air Force One VC-25A and the E-4B Night Watch, also known as the Doomsday plane, apparently just landed in Alaska just moments ago, which also suggests that Air Force One is probably landing there as well. It's probably going to be refueling there, I'd imagine, probably in Anchorage. So it looks like they're about to make the final leg from Alaska to China itself for that meeting with Xi Jinping. So they're currently making their way there. That's a very long flight, by the way, from DC all the way to China. I don't know how many hours that is, but that's an extremely long flight. So they're about to arrive. It'll be a 2-day summit there. We don't know what they're going to be discussing yet. It could be anything. We'll have to find out when it happens. But just to let y'all know, apparently it's on its way.
And of course, we will be making sure to cover those developments as they continue on air, but it does appear that Air Force One has made a scheduled stop in Anchorage, Alaska to be able to refuel for the continued leg all the way to China. Trans-Pacific crossings are some of the most arduous and lengthy in amount of time, and most flights from the western coast of the United States of America to Japan can be somewhere around 16 hours, meaning that a East Coast flight all the way to China may actually be in the realm of an entire 24-hour period to be able to make the flight with the one pit stop in Anchorage all the way to Beijing within the People's Republic of China. So a very significant flight and a strenuous one for the flight crews and everyone else involved in that flight heading to China at the moment. But with that breaking news out of the way, it is time for us to get on into the rest of the major breaking news that we have, starting with our largest stories first and moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And moving us on immediately into the largest story of the day, we have been able to hear that an attempted armed invasion by the Islamic Republic of Iran's IRGC and Iranian armed forces has been repelled today by the Kuwaiti Army around the area of Bubiyan Island. Bubiyan Island is an incredibly large island within the opening of the area around this canal here, which you can see here in this satellite photography, which is incredibly significant for the Kingdom of Kuwait. The island is largely uninhabited and does not have a lot of significant infrastructure within it at the moment, but it is a very large territorial holding relative to the size of Kuwait, making up somewhere around 7 to 10% of the territorial holdings of the city-state of the Kingdom of Kuwait. According to the official publication that was made today, an announcement by the Kuwaiti Armed Forces, this is as follows. Abdullah bin Zayed condemns IRGC members' infiltration of Kuwait's Bubiyan Island to carry out a terrorist plot and reaffirms the UAE's full solidarity with Kuwait. This was a statement, mind you all, of the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, condemned in the strongest terms the infiltration by members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Kuwait's Bubiyan Island to perpetrate hostile acts which resulted in the injury of a member of Kuwait's armed forces. Furthermore, His Highness expressed the UAE's solidarity with the state of Kuwait and its full support for all measures taken by its security authorities to counter these terrorist actions. His Highness affirmed that the UAE's full support for all measures taken by the state of Kuwait to safeguard its security and sovereignty and to preserve the stability and well-being of its society. His Highness also recommended the efficiency and vigilance of the Kuwaiti security authorities in successfully uncovering this terrorist plot. His Highness reiterated the UAE's categorical rejection of all forms of terrorism and emphasized the importance of strengthening regional and international cooperation to counter such threats. His Highness concluded by reaffirming that the security of the state of Kuwait is an integral part of the security of the UAE and the Arab Gulf states, and reiterated the UAE's full support for all actions taken by Kuwait to maintain its security and stability and protect its national achievements. This condemnation by the United Arab Emirates is, in fact, an admission that the Kuwaitis did have an armed attempt at an invasion of Bubiyan Island today by the IRGC forces of Iran, and it appears that it was repelled by the Kuwaitis. At the moment, it's a little bit unclear as to how large this amphibious landing force was, but we're assuming that it may have been somewhere in between a platoon to company-sized element that attempted to land on the largely uninhabited Bubiyan Island today and was repulsed by some element of the Kuwaiti Army on the ground. This is the first armed attempt that we've heard of by Iran to actually land upon and conduct armed action on the sovereign territory of another state within the entirety of the Middle East so far. And it does appear that luckily the Kuwaiti Army was very quick to arrive to the area, conduct a defensive perimeter, and then apparently counterattack, forcing the IRGC back onto their boats and then fleeing, most likely directly just a few miles north, to the Iranian coastline where they could most likely seek refuge. This is a fairly significant sort of an incident, and we also want to make it clear that this did not happen just today, as we were able to hear some additional details. Kuwait has accused Iran of attempting a failed attack on Bubiyan Island, which hosts a China-funded port project. Kuwait has formally summoned the Iranian ambassador and delivered a strong protest note after a group of IRGC terrorists infiltrated the island, a highly strategic Kuwaiti territory. 4 suspects were arrested and 2 escaped. According to media reports, it was apparently some form of a sabotage force. This is a fairly concerning development once again, as this is the first ever recorded attempt that we've seen by IRGC forces to make a landing within the sovereign territory of another country and to conduct hostile acts within the territory of what the Iranians would call an enemy state. At the moment right now, a lot of people are actually talking about this attempted armed invasion, if we want to call it that, of Bubiyan Island inside of Kuwait, and what they're believing this was, what the intent of the IRGC may have been by landing forces forces in this area. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this right now? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so we're just hearing about this today, but this actually happened over a week ago. But Kuwait finally decided to come out and say something about it, and the timing is very interesting because this is coming out right before the U.S. president's going to China. I want to keep that in mind right there because there's a second detail of this story that makes a big difference about what this could be all about. Apparently, on that island, there is a Chinese investment into an oil facility, at least allegedly, on the island that was invaded by the Iranian armed forces. Apparently, it is there. So that is a big note. I'm not sure if that was an intentional leak that came out today, so that way they could bring that up with Xi Jinping, possibly. I'm not sure if that's the reason why, but that is interesting timing, I will say the least. But what are your thoughts about this thing right here? Because apparently, the Iranians sent a small boat or a skiff or some military ship right up to the coast. They tried to invade it. They got repelled by the Kuwaiti armed forces, but we're not really sure exactly what the exact details are about this. It's still a little bit vague. But what are your thoughts? 50% said Iran wanted to sabotage Kuwait. That's why they were sending the guys in. 32% said Iran wanted to invade and take the island itself and basically annex it. And 9% said, I don't believe the report. And I think it sounds to me like Iran was trying to do what pretty much every country is doing in the modern day. They were trying to insert sabotage forces into Kuwait, and they used that island as the method to get them in. We've seen that in Cuba, by the way. We saw that in Venezuela, the U.S. doing that as well. It looks like Iran is trying to play that game as well by sending in operatives on the ground covertly to get in there. But of course, the Iranians being rather incompetent, they got caught, and they also got apparently mowed down when they were trying to get on the island. So that didn't go too well for them, to say the least. But Enforcer, what say you?
The Iranians should have known that this wasn't going to work. The Kuwaitis did shoot down 3 F-15Es of the United States Air Force in an afternoon with one F-18 that's a fairly old one, mind you all. It's about 30 to 40 years old, and it shot down some of the most modern F-15s that we had, 3 of them at a time. So generally they should have known that if the Kuwaitis were really kind of waxing the U.S. over their airspace, then the IRGC sabotage teams that were landing on the island were not going to be seeing much success either. The Kuwaitis are a force to be reckoned with, ally and enemy apart. But I would have to say that it most likely was some form of a sabotage team that was attempting to make it here to Bubiyan Island. And I'd also have to say that for the people who are saying that they don't believe the report, this is a very likely sort of a situation that we're seeing here. Iran's border, if we're measuring it directly from Kuwait's as the crow flies, is quite literally only 13 miles away from this island. Meaning that it's not far at all. I mean, you could load up a couple of guys and a couple of ribs and sail them right out here from the Iranian Bay and straight down to the island, and it's about the length of an average fishing trip for most people here in the United States of America. So this is certainly not out of the question at all that they could have landed sabotage teams on this island, and considering that the Kuwaitis have officially announced this and countries within the region are reacting to it as an actual event, this certainly did happen. One thing I would have to say, however, is that the Iranians may have been attempting to land on this island to either physically exert control over it for some period of time and lead to a significant international embarrassment for the Western world, as it would now be showing that the Iranians can actually possibly conduct an armed invasion and physically hold territory for some period of time, or they may have been attempting to try and sabotage and destroy this larger port facility and development that is currently being built here within the area of the mouth of this river, which oddly enough has no name.
That's the weird part, though, because according to reports, if you believe the articles out there, they're saying that there's a major Chinese investment with this island right here and that port itself. So if that turns out to be the case, that's kind of weird for Iran to want to go in and try to sabotage something that their buddies China is trying to invest in. That's a little bit strange. I will admit that's a detail to the story which kind of messes up the narrative a little bit, is why would they be trying to hit that? Unless they just simply don't care, and they don't care if they're hitting China stuff or not. They just wanted to hurt the Gulf states. That could be it as well. They could just be going really rogue and they just don't care.
Man, acting crazy and silly. I don't even care anymore.
Man, they were acting crazy and silly, that's for sure. They literally pulled straight up to the island. They ran straight on it. They got mowed down, and they said, "Okay, we're gonna wipe our hands and call it a day now." That was a real bad insertion into that territory.
Man, you know, I've heard, folks, that while the Middle East and Kuwait isn't exactly known for cold weather, it is a desert nation covered in sand and hot heats. I did hear that the Kuwaiti Army apparently iced a load of Iranians. So apparently there is something called ice cold inside of Kuwait, and it looks to be the Kuwaiti Army. They seem to be pretty good at what they do. But I don't really know what they were trying to do as far as sabotaging anything around the area of this port facility. It may have been that they knew that there was Chinese investments that were being put into building out this port facility, but they're generally just trying to cause some form of economic damage long-term to the Kuwaitis as punishment for them basing U.S. forces and also operating in support of the U.S. operations inside of Iran prior. And they may have been trying to go for, target, and destroy this construction facility that you can see right about here near to the construction plot and the island, or the artificial island that's been built for this port. That may have also been the reason of why they were doing that and what they were doing. And regardless whether or not there was a Chinese investment in it, they may have viewed that the damage to Kuwait was more important than the kind of fallout that they might get from the Chinese for sabotaging one of their own financial investments. But currently,
Yeah, it could be. It could be, by the way. Also, I saw some people saying, "Well, why would they need to send people in on the ground to go and attack that?" And to my knowledge, I think this was still under construction. And am I correct about
yes,
that?
it still is.
It was under. Yeah, so they couldn't just cyber attack it because that's what countries like to do in the modern day. Instead of like physically sending in operatives on the ground to go sabotage oil infrastructure, usually these days they simply insert malware into the industrial control systems inside of these oil refineries, and then they usually mess the safeguards up, and that causes an explosion. That's what countries do in the modern day to cause sabotage. So you don't really need operatives on the ground. You simply need a really good offensive cyber warfare team for that. Iran does have that, even though they're a backwards country. They do have a pretty decent cyber team for the most part, but this is under construction, so that was impossible. So that's probably why they sent them in on the ground, would be my guess, because they had no way to hit it otherwise.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to cyber attack, say, like a Caterpillar, like skid steer. That'd be pretty tough to be able to blow one of those up, or a crane, or an excavator, or whatnot. So you kind of had to go in and do that sort of stuff physically for the larger part. And it's also hard to cyber attack an artificial island, considering that sand doesn't really have any active computer components within it during those moments of time. So, of course, that could happen later. I mean, you could put computer circuitry in sand. I don't know how you do it, but you might be able to pull it off, and then you might be able to cyber attack the soil, but highly unlikely in the present age and in our current era. But moving us on out of Bubiyan Island, it does appear that other countries outside of Kuwait have apparently already been taking hostile actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran that we have not been able to hear about until today, and actually coming out two at a time. Moving us on to the most important one, we did get news out of the United Arab Emirates that apparently the UAE has carried out multiple covert strikes on Iran, both before and after the April 8th ceasefire between the U.S., Israel, and Tehran, according to Bloomberg reports, citing people who are familiar with the matter. So it actually does appear that, according to Bloomberg and officials that spoke to Bloomberg about this, the United Arab Emirates has been conducting some degree of attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran during the active war and during the ongoing ceasefire, which has now lasted for about a month and a half, well, more so a month and a week at this point. And we don't know what exactly they've been hitting, but this does confirm that a lot of that anti-aircraft fire, some of the drones that have been shot down over Iran, which looked to be more so Middle Eastern in origin because they were winglongs. They weren't Predators or Reapers or Tritons of ours or Hermes of the Israelis, though that actually seems to be leading credence to the idea that the UAE has been involved in armed attacks against Iran. This might also be giving us a decent idea why the Iranians are still going out of their way to try and target and hit the UAE more than everybody else, is that from what we're understanding, the UAE has been taking some armed action against the Iranians and is still taking armed action against the Iranians. This is giving us, once again, another understanding that the UAE is largely exercising its right to respond to Iranian attacks, and for once, we have to actually correct our coverage here. The Middle Eastern countries actually are taking some offensive action. It's not a great deal, but to some degree they are against the Iranians, even during the ongoing ceasefire, which I'd have to say is better than nothing at this point. At least they're not sitting around idly just waiting for the U.S. to do everything for them. So good on them for that. We also were able to hear out of the Saudi Arabians today that apparently they have also been conducting some form of retaliatory airstrikes on Iran in late March. But this was during the armed portion of the conflict. This hasn't been after the ceasefire, but apparently to some extent, the Saudi Air Force was involved in conducting some airstrikes in some extent in Iran, while the United States and Israel were also conducting their own strikes on Iran during that latter end of the armed phase of the war. So this is also giving us a clear indication at this point that the Saudi Arabians are also involved in some form of armed operations and may be conducting their own reconnaissance operations of Iran, which is giving us a clear idea of whose drones are flying over Iran on the daily. It's probably highly likely UAE and Saudi drones that are flying over Iran and gathering reconnaissance, and any sort of sporadic anti-air fire and explosions that we're hearing of inside of Iran may be due to UAE airstrikes and drone strikes that are being conducted in Iran at this moment in time. And a lot of people are talking about this very major bombshell development that has come out today in between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, having now been both known to be conducting or have conducted strikes in Iran, when prior we had not understood that they were conducting strikes of any type. And a lot of people are wondering, why has it been kept secret for so long? This would be something that would greatly lead a lot of people in the Western world to believe that there is a good dog in the fight, considering that the UAE and Saudi Arabia would be actively involved in supporting the war or conducting a war against Iran on our side. Yet the entire time, the U.S. public has not heard anything about this until today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so it turns out it's possible that maybe Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and possibly maybe some more Gulf states finally found some balls and launched some secret strikes on Iran weeks ago. But here's the question, though. Why keep it secret? If they're going to attack Iran, then why not make it known that they were the ones to do it, to, of course, defend their sovereignty? Why keep it secret? And it looks like 65% said the U.S. probably told these countries to be covert about the retaliation. 16% said the Gulf states are simply being cowardly, and 17% or 7% actually said, I don't think they actually attacked Iran. It sounds like a lie. And I would say I'm with the 64%. My guess is the U.S. probably told these countries to be covert, because here's the catch. The U.S. was already realizing that these countries were running low on missile interceptors. So by announcing the fact that these states launched attacks on Iran, that could draw more fire to the Gulf states, and they're already low on missile interceptors for defense, and that might cause a problem. So that could be part of the reason why they told them not to be vocal about it. But here's the other thing as well. If these Gulf states and Saudi Arabia, etc., wanted to start attacking Iran defensively, they could simply act as a coalition, which makes it a lot harder for Iran to retaliate against one individual Gulf state country. If they attack as a unit, which it sounds like they probably did just secretly, then that gives them some more leverage against Iran. But they didn't do that, because in my opinion, I think the U.S. probably told them to be covert about it. So I don't think they're being cowardly necessarily. It sounds like they actually did kind of, defend themselves a bit. And I have a feeling it's the U.S. that told them to keep it like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would largely agree. I think it is the U.S. that told them to keep this covert, because we have seen that Saudi Arabia and the UAE in prior times has made it incredibly clear in publicized statements that they are tired of the Iranians attacking them and they are going to respond if they keep doing it. And then after those statements were put out, which were largely lined up at the moment in time that we're now hearing that they were striking Iran afterwards, we wouldn't hear of anything publicly about them responding to Iran's attacks. And that's kind of odd when you look at it. If they are already starting the public track for people to follow along with, that they're putting out official statements, which we did cover on air, that we were tired of Iran attacking us, and if they don't stop, we're going to start hurting them. And then afterwards, there was complete crickets on everything that they were doing. Then that's clearly showing us that somebody stepped in at that point in time, most likely the U.S., and said, hey, look, if you're going to bomb them, let's keep that on the down low and not tell everybody that you're doing that. Because it's a little bit weird that they were officially building themselves up in public announcements to get to striking Iran publicly, and then they never announced that afterwards when they did strike them physically. So I would have to say that someone did step in. It had to be the United States, and probably for the reason of trying to de-escalate, which I honestly don't know why we would be trying to de-escalate even back then and currently, because the Iranians are still controlling the Strait of Hormuz, still not relenting on that, still demanding unconditional surrender from the United States, and yet we're apparently going to be gagging our allies, I'd assume, into not announcing that they are conducting strikes against Iran because they've been tired of their crap, and also not working to clear out the Strait of Hormuz, which the Iranians are still blockading as of today. And surprise, surprise, everybody, that's not changing. They're only doubling down every day from the prior statements they made the day before, which isn't getting us closer to the Strait of Hormuz opening. It's getting us farther away from the Strait of Hormuz opening if we keep working on the route we're working on right now.
Yeah. Well, you know, my question is this. They say they attacked. I would generally believe that, but for the most part, it doesn't sound like it's false. It sounds like it's plausible at least. But it's like, how big was this attack that these Gulf states conducted? Was it just like one random missile they fired into Iran? Did they attack like a major facility for the military of Iran? It's like, how big was it really?
We don't know that, actually. That's a good question. It might have just been a small amount of airstrikes, maybe 2 or 3 over a day, or something along those lines. It may have been just a few, may have been a handful, or it may have lasted for days. We're not really sure. The UAE's attacks, however, sound to be a lot more encompassing, apparently lasting during the active war and after the active war, during the time of the ceasefire, and apparently intermittently striking targets throughout the country, which may be giving us a good idea that those random explosions that we're hearing about in Iran and the air defense fire and the reports that the Iranians have that there's drones above their heads might actually be UAE drones that are conducting strikes in Iran instead of ours or Israel's. Because so far we have never heard, folks, of Israel or the United States taking credit for the drones that are over Iran. And the only time that we have ever seen the debris of one of these drones, it was a wing-long drone that was provided by the Chinese, which would suggest that either Saudi Arabia or the UAE was the one operating that drone over their airspace, because I know for sure that the Saudi Arabians operate the wing-long, and I'm pretty certain that the UAE also operates the wing-long drone as well, meaning that it could have been either one of them flying a drone directly over Iran and possibly conducting some limited strikes or reconnaissance gathering for future strikes against the Iranians.
Yeah. Maybe so. Also, I see a couple people in the chat saying that they're saying that the UAE attacked the Larak refinery. I think they're saying they're alleging it was the Lavon Island oil refinery. They're alleging that was the one that was hit. But we do have a video claiming to show that, by the way. Unfortunately, I put that in the likes tab, by the way, if you want to show that video.
Yeah.
It's a video that we saw a while back. In fact, we probably showed it live when it happened. But the video allegedly shows one of the strikes that the UAE conducted. But let's take a look at the video.
And there's the fire right there.
It's just hard to say with certainty if this actually was the UAE attack, but this appears to be the most popular opinion that this was one of the strikes that they conducted.
It is interesting. We're not really sure who, because of course just a blazing fire doesn't really tell us much about who set the fire by bombing the refinery, but somebody did hit it. It is incredibly close to the UAE, meaning that the range problem wouldn't really be there for an attack like this. But I do want to show you all that the only two wing-long operators, and I gotta say, folks, that's one hell of a comical name, but the only two wing-long operators in the entirety of the Middle East is the UAE and Saudi Arabia. We have clearly seen picture evidence that the Iranians showed of a wing long, which did not line up with the wing profile of any of our drones or Israel's drones, which clearly gives us an understanding either the UAE was operating the drone or the Saudis were operating the drone over Iran and it was shot down. Here's also a couple on display in Kazakhstan, apparently part of the People's Liberation Army's aviation forces, because they actually have the identifying emblems of the People's Liberation Army's Air Force on them. Let me see here. The United Arab Exports has, yeah, so actually they do have some. And also Saudi Arabia has some as well, but apparently the public number has never been disclosed. I believe that these things, yeah, so these things actually can carry ordnance. The FT-10, the FT-9, the FT-7, the GB-7, the GB-4, and then also the BRM-1 and the AKD-10. Both of these being some form of anti-tank missile equivalent to an AGM-114 Hellfire or something somewhat analogous to it. So these drones actually can conduct strikes in a limited capacity. I'm assuming that they probably have two hard points, so two air-to-ground missiles or two air-to-ground bombs on each drone, so they can conduct limited airstrikes with these. And the fact that we did see the debris field of a wing long and recovered components of it over Iran is confirming that one of those groups was conducting strikes with wing long drones at some point in the past, and we just weren't able to put together the pieces yet because we didn't know, like we know today, that the UAE and Saudi Arabia were conducting attacks at some point against the Iranians, and the UAE supposedly is still conducting attacks at this moment. But getting us on into some other important news within the Middle East, we've also seen that it appears that more aircraft are starting to arrive within the area of the Prince Sultan Air Base, as 15 F-16s recently arrived at the Prince Sultan Air Base, which is still showing us that there are more aircraft aircraft being moved into the area, which is still giving us an idea that the possibility of U.S. strikes against Iran or the continuation of strikes is still being considered, as the movement of forces or the redeployment of forces into this theater or area of operations is almost always suggesting that there is serious consideration in the background to conducting further strikes, and it's more so a question of how those strikes are going to unfold and what kind of force would be necessary to be able to keep up that tempo of strikes and that type of a strategy against the Iranians once it resumes. Intermittent explosions were also reported in Sana'a in Yemen today, but we have nothing more to report on that than the fact that there were apparently explosions within the area. And we've also been able to confirm that according to the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, he's apparently stated that Israel did send Iron Dome air defense systems to the United Arab Emirates, which is the first official acknowledgement by anybody, including Israel, of the transfer of the systems into the UAE. We've also been able to hear some other interesting news as well out of the region, as we did get to hear that one of the tankers that was able to make it through the Iranian blockade, the Agoy Faniroi, was apparently making its way out of the Gulf of Oman today. And after it was somehow able to survive the Iranian blockade, it was then turned back by the U.S. Navy. One of the few ships that has been able to make it through the Iranian blockade has now not made it through the U.S. blockade, which is also showing us once again that the U.S. blockade, as far as alleviating the situation or forcing the situation to improve, might not be the case, because ships that are somehow able to survive the Iranian gauntlet are now in fear of not surviving the U.S. gauntlet, which it's largely guaranteed at this point that if you don't make it through the Iranian gauntlet, or if you do make it through, the U.S. gauntlet's pretty hard to make it through. So it appears that that situation is going to be continuing to worsen with each passing day. In the meantime, we've also been able to hear that apparently, according to satellite photography, which we were able to see here, a couple of oil slicks have emerged on the coastline of Iran near to this opening of this river mouth around right here, which appear to be showing us that about 12 fast attack boats may have been hit and destroyed at some point, showing that there is still some form of a naval battle quietly going on in between the U.S. and Iran at this moment inside of the Strait of Hormuz. But further details to provide on this as to how they were destroyed, how they were targeted, or any official announcements by the Iranians or the United States about this matter are not really forthcoming. At the moment, both sides are keeping a very stiff lip on this sort of a deal and not really giving any information to the public as to what exactly is going on. So we know that several fast attack boats have been hit and destroyed, but we don't know anything else more than that. We've also been able to hear that as well, there's been some additional developments near to the area of Bandar Abbas, where we have seen that the Iranian oil tankers that were hit and on fire just a couple of days ago in our last coverage are still on fire as of today.
Yeah, it looks like it's the engine room on fire, at least from here.
It is the engine room that's on fire, and we understand that this is only one of the 3 ships that is on fire in this area right now, and we just can't see the other 2 because they're a little bit farther away from the cameraman. These vessels were actually attacked by the United States, and we went out of our way to do it, right outside of their anchorage in Bandar Abbas, and they were not attempting to violate the U.S. blockade, but nevertheless they were hit. We believe that this is a larger attempt to put more economic pressure on the Iranians, but we're not really sure how successful that's going to be, because the Iranians, in their official statements today, have once again doubled down. According to the statements that Iran has made to Al Jazeera, Iran will not discuss the nuclear issue with the U.S. before these conditions are met. The war must end on all fronts, all sanctions must be lifted, all of Iran's frozen assets must be released, the U.S. must pay war reparations, and the U.S. must also recognize Iran's sovereign right over the entirety of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, that's funny right there. So that's just the requirement simply to sit down and talk about the nuclear issue. That's just to get to the talking table. I mean, that's insanity.
I mean, honestly, it's something else right here. I'd have to say that it's a really bizarre one to see. Because the Iranians are still largely demanding unconditional surrender at this point by the United States for us to even sit down and once again be told no by them on every nuclear issue. In the midst of this, in Tehran, they've also announced, like we were expecting, like clockwork, because analysis isn't that hard, that apparently they're going to be looking into enriching their uranium to 90%, which is exactly what is required for nuclear weaponry if it's attacked again, according to Ibrahim Razai, spokesman for the Iranian National Security Commission. So the Iranians are still making it clear, publicly, that they are working towards making a nuclear weapon. So for everybody who's ever said there's been no proof that Iran is working towards a nuclear weapon, This right here is literally them saying that they're going to resume working on a nuclear weapon, which suggests that at some point they had prior stated they were working on a nuclear weapon, and now they're going to start working on it again. I mean, this couldn't be more straightforward as far as making a casus belli if it ever could be. The Iranians will make it clear every day that they can that they are working towards enriching uranium to make a nuclear bomb, and they're going to keep doing it, and they're going to make a nuclear bomb to threaten our allies in the Middle East and us once they make an ICBM to boot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's why they're waiting until after they get done with this meeting in China with Xi Jinping. They're waiting to get done with that meeting first, and then once that's over with, they'll probably get right back to it. I'd imagine, because I mean, Iran's literally they're crossing every single red line the United States has said. They're not letting the Strait of Hormuz go, which was very predictable. They're not negotiating on the nuclear stuff unless they get like every single concession they want, basically a surrender of the United States essentially. So they're not conceding on anything. And also, a new report came out today saying that apparently Iran still maintains well over like 60 or 70% of their missile launchers and their actual missiles themselves. So that's worse than we had heard before. So the job is definitely not done. I think they're simply waiting for Pooh Bear to get the statements out to Christopher Robin in the 100-acre wood before they get back to hitting Iran.
I would definitely agree with that. And also, folks, really quickly, the Iranians are making it clear, and I want to make this clear, folks, because there's always this huge argument out there right now about, oh, the Israelis drug us into this war with a lie. The Iranians were never attempting to make a nuclear weapon. Who in the hell, who's using nuclear material for peaceful purposes only, needs to enrich it from 3.67%, which is what's needed for nuclear fuel in a reactor, to 90%? Who in the world is going to spend the money, the time, and the effort to enrich uranium to that high of a degree, that far, to put it in a nuclear reactor? I mean, that's going to be the most souped-up nuclear reactor ever. It's like putting a supercharger on the thing, and they don't need that for a nuclear reactor. They need it for a bomb. So if they're saying that they're already working on that, and we already know that they have, because some of their uranium's up to a 70% enrichment, which is nowhere close to energy grade, that's getting very close to weapons grade. If they're now saying that they're going to keep working on getting it up to 90%, obviously, the conclusion is it's for a nuclear weapon. They even said that in the statement. They would make an atomic bomb out of it. So, like, the answer is clear. They are working on a nuclear weapon, which is what we've understood for a long time, and their own official government statements make that clear. And that's what is posing an imminent national security threat to the United States first and foremost, which made the war necessary. Because unlike the situation in North Korea, where we weren't on the ball and we didn't react in time to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon, this time around we have a chance. And if y'all asked me, would you rather have a one rogue nuclear state threatening the United States, or two rogue nuclear states threatening the United States, I would always pick one, because managing one is a lot easier than managing two, and also having one of those nuclear-armed rogue states literally sitting on top of all the free oil produced in the world and threatening them every day, which could greatly affect our strategic position within the Middle East long term. So clearly...
Oh, man. Iran is way worse to have a nuke than North Korea. Like, I know some people are like, oh, a rogue state's a rogue state, but there are different levels of rogue state. Like North Korea, they are wild, but Kim Jong-un tries to put forth this image that he's a madman, but he's not insane enough to actually launch a nuke at somebody. He's not that far off the fringe. He's crazy, but he's not that crazy. The people inside of Iran, they are religious zealots. That's a lot different than Xi Jinping, or excuse me, than Kim Jong-un. I'm getting them all mixed up at this point. But but Kim Jong-un, man, he is actually more sane than anybody in Iran, like way more sane. So if Iran gets a nuke, in my opinion, that's way worse than Kim Jong-un having one.
Also, the North Korean government, regardless of how much we hate North Korea here on this channel, it is a lot more stable than Iran's government. North Korea is stable due to its extremely oppressive nature. Iran is oppressive, but it's not as oppressive, and we've seen that recently massive public revolts have happened in their country, which has greatly destabilized the central government. If a government like that in Iran was nuclear armed, we do not know what they would do, because they're in a far more unstable position and therefore may be more rash to use nuclear weapons on their neighbors or anyone in the world on a whim, as compared to North Korea, where the situation governmentally is a lot more stable, and they use nuclear weapons as more so a negotiating tool and a threat to be able to get negotiations in concessions than the Iranians, which may actually attempt to use them if they get them due to how unstable they are. But moving us on out of that, we do have to get to the intelligence reports that have come out of today, which we did get to hear that according to the New York Times, this was the following information that they got today. Iran still fields about 70% of its mobile launchers across the country and has retained roughly 70% of its pre-war missile stockpile, according to the assessments. That stockpile encompasses both ballistic missiles, which can target other nations in the region, and a smaller supply of cruise missiles, which can be used against shorter-range targets on land or at sea. We also were then able to hear that apparently internal U.S. military intelligence assessed that Iran has regained access to roughly 90% of its missile storage and launch facilities, which are now partially or fully operational. The reasoning why that's happened and why that statistic's around 90% is because after we caved in the tunnel entrances to a lot of the missile cities, we've given them so much time that they've literally just called up construction companies and contracted out the work for them to dig open the tunnel entrances to where they can walk back in and access the missiles that were inside of the caves. So right now, they have almost a full access to the 70% of the missiles in their stockpile that are left, and they still have some of the TELs that would be required to launch these missiles, apparently around 60 to 70% of them from what we know publicly, to be able to continue attacks against the entirety of the region whenever a war is to begin. With all this put together, many of y'all can tell that the situation requires swift action, once again by the United States, and that would be something that would be quite prudent at this moment in time, because the United States needs to see that the Strait of Hormuz is reopened. Not only does the United States need to see that, but the entirety of the Western world and the world over needs to see that the Strait of Hormuz is opened, and the quickest way to achieve that would be to resume military activities against the Islamic Republic of Iran and force open the Strait of Hormuz by the use of our armed forces. In the midst of that, news did also emerge today that Pakistan is apparently housing Iranian aircraft on their bases. I didn't put this down on the map today because the Iranians reacted and said, actually the Pakistanis reacted and said, this is absurd. Like we'd ever do such a thing. By the way, this is the same country that basically let Osama bin Laden hide in their country for a couple of years, but that's beside the point. But beyond that, the allegation came out that a couple of Iranian Air Force aircraft flew over to Pakistan and are hiding there, and the Pakistanis had this whole tizzy today against CBS, saying that the claim was completely baseless and a flat-out lie, and that really didn't happen, because that would completely destabilize the region if a fact like that came out. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so this caused some feathers to get ruffled today because now Pakistan's being accused of housing Iranian aircraft at their air bases, and Pakistan came out today and very quickly and abruptly denied the report. So what are your thoughts? Do you think Pakistan is also sort of double dipping here? They're trying to mediate the situation on behalf of the United States, while in the meantime possibly helping out Iran. Seems a little bit fishy, to say the least. But 49% said it sounds likely. Pakistan is bad. 21% said it sounds false. Pakistan's being framed. And 20% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And I'll be honest with you, folks, I don't trust Pakistan one iota. The people out there that say Pakistan's untrustworthy, they have a good reason for saying that, because, like the enforcer just mentioned, they have a history of harboring some very bad terrorists, and they've done that numerous times. So I don't really trust Pakistan that much. Pakistan's got some strange ideology when it comes to stuff like that. So for this accusation to come out today, also, by the way, the Pakistanis didn't deny that they were housing Iranian aircraft. They just simply said they weren't housing military aircraft. They admitted that they're apparently temporarily housing some Iranian diplomatic aircraft, and they said they're doing that because they came there for the talks. So they didn't outright deny it. They just kind of gave like a conditional denial to a certain degree. So I'm going to say I'm with the 50%. Obviously, it's not proven. Right now, it's just an allegation in a report, but I would say it sounds likely. I wouldn't put it past them one bit. But Enforcer, what say you?
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, you damn fool! This is clearly a diplomatic aircraft. What the hell is
You see, because Iran was running low on other aircraft because they've been hit so hard, they had to use a military aircraft for the diplomatic delegation.
Hi, Victor Orbov here. Today we're circumventing sanctions by transporting F-4 Phantoms by claiming they're humanitarian support aircraft. Man, man, that's what we're about to be getting on into next. But outside of that, I would have to say, folks, I don't trust Pakistan a whole lot. They've given us a lot of reason not to trust them here on this channel personally, because they lied through their teeth although they did come out on top in the whole India-Pakistan conflict that happened last, they did lie through their teeth the entire time about how that was going down, along with India. So I don't really have a reason, personally, to trust either country, because they seem to have a really hard time telling the truth on anything when it comes to foreign policy or acts of war. So I would believe that they probably are harboring some Iranian aircraft within their country, because I also want to remind you all that this isn't unheard of within those countries that claim to be Islamic brotherly nations. It was during the war in Iraq that a load of Iraqi aircraft just packed up and flew into Iran and hung out there while the U.S. was beating their ass in 1991 and '03. Iran, by the way, mind you all, right before the Gulf War of 1991, Iraq and Iran had been killing each other for the well on part of 8 years. It was one of the biggest and bloodiest wars that's ever happened in the Middle East. And then literally just 2 years after that, every Iraqi plane that thought that their time was nigh would just pack up and fly across the border into Iran to safety, even when they were mortal enemies just years before. And then in '03, they did a similar thing with the remnants of the Iraqi Air Force. They flew over into Iran. So if we were working off of that concept, that countries that look like they're mortal enemies in foreign policy or even just indifferent to each other might help each other out because they have a feeling of mutual bonds over religious or ideological reasons, it's not out of the question that a couple of Iranian military aircraft just packed up and flew into Pakistan when they thought that their time was nigh and they were about to get obliterated on the ground.
Oh yeah. 100%. And also, I mean, I get the fact that in diplomacy, sometimes you have to like sweet talk people in diplomacy. That's just part of the game right there. But the way Pakistan talks toward Iran is very, very questionable because they go beyond simple diplomacy. Like they call the Iranians their brothers in arms and stuff like this. They say, oh, that's our brothers in Iran. It's like they're totally ignoring the fact that Iran just wiped out like 40,000 of their own people just about a month or two ago because they were simply trying to stand up for their rights. They wiped them all out. But yet Pakistan still uses this very sweet-talking language toward Iran nonetheless. So that tells me a lot about where they stand. If they're willing to overlook stuff like that, that says a lot about Pakistan. I think the only reason the U.S. is keeping good relations with Pakistan right now and trying to keep the thing kind of like status quo is because Pakistan is largely cooperating with the United States by putting out statements the administration wants them to put out. So that's probably why they're a useful conduit for information right now. But outside of that, nobody else trusts them. I'm sure the administration probably doesn't trust them either because they'd be foolish to do so.
I would have to say, I think that that definitely is the case as well, as that we're trying to play the diplomatic game. But I know, folks, because we always talk to people on Twitter that are into open source intelligence, and these people are more so attuned to this fine quality of work than we are. If y'all are listening right now from the Twitter OSINT community, y'all need to go and get satellite photography of every Pakistani airbase that we can find in their country where there is not covered shelters and look around, because if we can find a single, and I mean a single, F-4 Phantom or an F-14 or an F-5, we've hit the jackpot at that point for intelligence. Because, by the way, folks, Pakistan, from what I understand, does not operate most or of any of those airframes anymore. Let me go pull that up, because we might be able to see that some people in open source intelligence might be able to blow the lid on this if there's some good information out there at the moment. So, yep, they don't operate any of those airframes actively, and it doesn't look like they have at any point in the past, possibly from what I can tell. So, right now, if we're looking for aircraft inside of Pakistan that would not be Pakistani, as long as they're not F-16s, J-10s, JF-17s, Mirage 3s, Mirage 5s, or F-7s, they are definitely an Iranian aircraft that's sitting out on the tarmac and just waiting for the war to end so they can then fly back into Iran. If we can find those on satellite, the case is closed on that one, and Pakistan is actively harboring Iranian military aircraft in the midst of this situation. So maybe we'll be able to find some more information on that, maybe some intelligence, and be able to provide that to y'all from open source intelligence. Hopefully we'll see that some OSINT people are able to get on top of that one and find the answer for everybody, because that would be a great thing to know. But moving us on out of that news with Pakistan, we've also been able to hear of some other interesting developments today out of the United States. As many of y'all will know, right now, the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz is starting to cause some economic issues here within the United States of America. The domestic price of gas is rising, the price per barrel of oil has been remaining high, and as a result of that, we've also been seeing that other vital industrial requirements, like fertilizers and whatnot, which also are heavily sourced from the Middle East, are starting to run low. Bankruptcies within U.S. farms have risen by 40% since the beginning of this year, with a 70% rise within the U.S. Midwest. We've also been hearing from many viewers of our own here on this channel that work in the trucking industry that their trucking companies are not able to handle the massive rise in the price of diesel. And we've also been able to hear from many that the price of a great deal of other goods is continuing to rise, and inflation also appears to once again be on the rise as well, as just recently we started to hear that inflation has risen to about 3.8%, which is the highest level that we've seen since May of 2023. Mind you all, May of 2023 was the very after end of the pandemic, which we saw that due to a significant amount of government spending programs in the trillions to be able to try and cause some economic activity to continue, started to lead to an increase in inflation. We're now seeing that a very similar sort of an incident is happening here as well, and the inflation has already risen to 3.8% and is still on the rise at this moment. With this all in mind, right now, the U.S.'s economic position is one that's being seriously considered by many people in the public, including us here on the channel, to require direct military action by the United States to forcibly reopen the Strait of Hormuz as quickly as possible. A reporter actually asked the President of the United States today about this very instance and asked the question, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal with Iran? And the President said, not even a little bit. I don't think about the Americans' financial situation when dealing with negotiations. So apparently we're understanding that the strategy right now is being conducted with very little care or regard to the impact on the U.S. public because of how slow the progress is at the moment. If the U.S. conducted military actions to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, we might be able to see that the Strait of Hormuz becomes semi-open within possibly the next 2 months. Currently, right now, we're expecting the Strait of Hormuz would most likely be opened within the next 8 to 9 months at this point right now, because we would have to economically grind down the Iranians, which on the best timetables is going to take about 4 months, and then we would have to find some way to actually clear out the strait, which would then take months even more on top of that. So that means that right now, the current plan, I would assume, largely understands that there is economic pressure being put on the U.S. public, but the president apparently is not planning that in any strategy at all of the United States at the moment, and is just letting the pressure come down on the U.S. public due to the ineptitude and incompetencies that have been seen in the war planning and the execution of the war and the executing of pressure against the Iranians to reopen the strait in this current day and age at the moment. The president then also made another statement, apparently while on board Air Force One, heading to China. When the fake news says that the Iranian enemy is doing well militarily against us, it's virtual treason in that it is such a false and even preposterous statement. They are aiding and abetting the enemy. All it does is give Iran false hope when none should exist. These are American cowards that are rooting against their country. Iran had 159 ships in their navy. Every single ship is now resting at the bottom of the sea. They have no navy. Their air force is gone. All technology is gone. Their leaders are no longer with us, and their country is an economic disaster. Only losers, ingrates, and fools are able to make a case against the United States. So that's apparently the statement of the president.
Wow. Yeah, apparently exercising the First Amendment now makes you a traitor. Apparently, that's pretty lame right there, folks. Like, putting all politics aside, that's disgraceful for a president to make statements like that. Because first of all, that I haven't heard anybody calling for Iran to win the war. Number one, I get it. Mainstream media sometimes sounds like they're calling for that, but they're not like saying they hope Iran wins the war. They're simply saying that the Strait of Hormuz isn't open, which it's not, and also there's no clear plan to reopen it. So that's what they're saying. So now that's being considered treason, I guess. So that's really lame right there, I would say.
Honestly, this is one of the weakest things I've ever seen. This is basically getting back towards the Alien and Sedition Acts that were ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court way back in the James Adams administration, way back then. I mean, this is just getting absolutely pitiful, because everybody at this point is seeing that the war has been executed poorly, and while it is a necessary war, certainly many things could have been done better by the U.S. government. But instead of trying to work around that and actually improve the war plan, now we're just going to be told that anybody who criticizes the U.S. government is apparently conducting active treason. But here's my question, folks. I'm not making this political here, but if we were to apply this rule fairly, how in the world would the current president have fared in the last administration for all the statements that he said and went out of his way with a great deal of bluster that put the United States in an incredibly weak-looking position? The last president was called weak to the point of incompetence. We were told that supporting Ukraine was not in American interest at all, which I would definitely say is treason if we're working off of this kind of idea right here, that just stating critical comments against the government is treason that go against the U.S.'s collective interests. We were told many things in the past administration by this guy right here about how weak and incompetent and stupid and hopeless the United States is, which by this definition here, all of that would have been treason every day of the week. How in the world is the rule applied one way, but not every way, whenever a political group is in charge? Are y'all noticing that these days, folks? Whenever you're in with the political group that's in charge, they can call everything treason and whatnot, completely violating the rights of U.S. citizens to say whatever they wish. And to make it clear, folks, I'm not a big fan of people in the United States saying that Iran should win. I think that's an absolutely stupid statement. But the First Amendment gives people the right to make those statements as long as they don't follow through with trying to conduct espionage, sabotage, or actually giving the enemy vital intelligence that would be amounting to treason. You could say whatever you want in this country.
Yeah, and also, yeah, what he's describing here is not even the definition of treason. Also, by the way, saying someone is committing virtual treason, that's accusing people of committing criminal activity. I mean, that's serious. That's not just something to lob around like just some type of rhetoric or something. Like to go around like accusing people of crimes, that's pretty serious, to say the least. Also, by the way, the punishment for treason, by the way, I believe it includes the death penalty. That's on the books apparently. So I mean, that's a serious thing to lob around at people just because you don't like what they're saying. That's a pretty lame thing to do.
Yeah, it's absolutely lame and it's pitiful, and it's also it's like I've seen very few people in the chat trying to defend this, and I don't even know how very few are trying to defend this. This is a complete abridgment of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. Many of people in here right now who were not a big fan of the last administration, off of this definition right here, could be charged with treason for criticizing the last administration off of this rule right here. The sword, when it comes to the law, folks, works on a two-way street. Whoever's in charge working off of this kind of a metric, if you say anything against them that criticizes them, you're apparently conducting treason at this point, according to the current president, which I'd say is an absolutely ridiculous sort of a notion, because isn't the democratic system of this country built on criticism? And that's why we vote on people and people get voted out and voted in, is on the idea that someone might be able to do a better job, or the current guy has plenty of flaws that could be corrected by someone else that's new getting elected, regardless of who they are, even if they're from the same party. This is completely going against the American principles that this country is built on. And I'd say that these sorts of statements right here greatly degrade the kind of public trust that people have in the U.S. government. And it almost makes it, at this point, a duty to criticize the government heavily because of how much they're pushing back against any type of criticism, even from the common citizen. But anyways, moving on from these statements, which I have to say, folks, greatly aggravated me today, because it's basically putting statements like ours where we say, the war plans are being executed poorly, this is how we need to do them to see success. That's apparently also thrown in the group of virtual treason as well, which is pretty ridiculous considering that this channel looks out for the best interests of the country every day of the week, and that's why we go out of our way to criticize everybody in charge and to try and give statements that could possibly improve the very plans they're trying to execute and achieve the same results, but in a better way. And apparently that's virtual treason as well these days. I mean, apparently, folks, at this point, if you criticize anyone who's a part of the Palm Beach Breakfast Club, that's apparently virtual treason, according to the current guy.
It's like also, by the way, it's like I personally believe that the U.S. has messed up with the Strait of Hormuz. I personally think they have, and that's why we're in this predicament right now, because the planning was not good whatsoever. They just ran straight into it and they let Iran take control of the strait. I think that personally. But for the people out there that say, oh, well, look, the U.S. is doing it the right way, and you saying the opposite, you're wrong. I would personally never say we should lock up the people saying that it's all going fine and great. I would never say to lock those people up for treason. That's insanity. That's being anti-American to do that. It's like everybody has a right to their opinion. If somebody believes it's going good, bad, or in between, it's like people have a right to say that. If they don't, then we're not America anymore if it's gotten to that point. So it's the downright like bottom line of this, it's just rhetoric just to basically lash out at people. There's nothing legally behind this, but it's just lame to even say that.
Yeah, it is generally. It's ridiculous. I had to make sure to address that one today, folks, because this kind of stupidity these days that permeates within the political circles, to where if you criticize their little blessed group or their great leader, it's akin to treason. It's a ridiculousness. Because if it wasn't for that kind of criticism that exists on both ends, the democratic system that exists in this country that allows for y'all, the common citizens, to have a say one way or another, wouldn't be allowed to exist. It's ridiculous at this point. It's stupid. It's basically directly attacking anybody who just doesn't blindly follow the current guy. And considering that kind of loyalty is apparently now being demanded, it really begs the question: how much loyalty does someone like that deserve? But outside of that, moving us on out of the Strait of Hormuz and the Middle East for a brief moment, we have been able to hear that in the meantime, there has also been some other developments coming from around the world. And before we move on into the rest of our major news coverage out of Eastern Europe, which there has been a lot of today, and also throughout the entirety of Europe as a whole, we do have to say that we're greatly appreciative of so many people who've been here with us so far and watching at this moment. We have had 20,000 people here at the peak of this show tonight, and we've also had 104,000 people here over the course of the stream. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many people who have been enjoying this channel so far tonight over the first hour, because if it wasn't for all of y'all watching this news, we wouldn't be able to put out the analysis that we put out every day, and then all the kind of news coverage that we do every day as well. And so I gotta say a humongous thanks to every single one of y'all once again. And before we move on into the rest of our major news, I do want to take a minute to get to talk to a couple of y'all and answer 3 questions from the chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping to our first super chat of the night, this one is going to go to Kevin. And thank you very much, Kevin, for that $50 support, and we do appreciate that very much. He said, "Good evening, my brothers in Christ." He said, "I love you guys. With the love of our Lord, and I pray from the depths of the soul that you both remain safe, successful, and influential." Thank you, by the way. He said, "Also, have you watched the 1993 Gettysburg movie? It's still so good."
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Kevin, and also thank you for the kind words and the high praise. Hopefully we will still remain a significant channel here in news coverage on YouTube well into the future. And I hope that a lot of people have been enjoying our coverage tonight, because we always do try our best, as we say time and time again every night for years now. But I have not watched a 1993 Gettysburg movie, actually. I don't think I ever have. A lot of people always critically acclaim it, and I have seen some clips of it, and as far as the historical accuracy, it's incredibly good. I mean, they went above and beyond on the Gettysburg series to make it as good as it could be, which I'd have to say they did over the top job. It was incredible. But I'd also have to say that while I haven't watched that movie, I have been listening to a song lately that's heavily related to the Civil War, came out in the midst of the U.S. Civil War, that I find to be a really powerful one, and honestly, it's so good, I was like, dang, I wish we could play it here on the channel, but it's a specific rendition by a specific orchestra from the 60s, and therefore it's copyright and all, unfortunately. But it's the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and I've been listening to that one lately because it's a very powerful song. The lyrics are incredibly good. It's very patriotic, and I really like the composition that specific orchestra made when they recorded the lines, and it was a very good one. But I gotta say, a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, we wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to keep this channel a living reality. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And you know something, Matthew, you can always tell when people get extremely offended by something, you know, the snowflake type, Matthew, before we move on to the next one. Because then they start just pointing out random things, like this one viewer who's been here for a while now saying that her voice sounds fake. It's like, what do you want us to do about it? It's like that's our voice, man. That's like literally how we talk everywhere. But
my voice sounds fake. What is that, like is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like a voice sounding fake? I mean, technically, I guess that means it sounds too good to be true, I guess. So I guess it's a compliment, I guess. Unfortunately, this is my real voice, fortunately or unfortunately.
I mean, like, man, your voice is fake AF. It's like, what am I supposed to do about that? Change it? Like, how in the world do you go about changing a voice, you know? That's a good question. Honestly, that person ought to change brains, because apparently they don't have a lot of whatever's in there.
Damn.
But anyways, and with that, it is time for us to move on to the second question of this segment.
And our second one here goes to Kangor. And thank you very much, Kangor, for that $25 support. And we do appreciate that as well. And he said, hello, everybody. I just woke up and hopped on the stream. No World War III yet, I see. But the last time I was here, I mentioned that meme, Rip My Granny. Sorry for not clarifying. My granny passed ages ago. Oh, okay. I'm glad to hear that because I wasn't sure I even mentioned that on the air. I was like, I don't know if this is the meme or your granny actually just passed away. So I went with the safe option and said, condolences to your granny. But apparently, granny's been away for a while. So it was the meme, apparently. So thank you for that support once again. I'm glad we didn't offend you. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, thank goodness. We were so concerned about that super chat on the last show. We were like, we don't know if it really is legit or if it's the joke. And so we were both like, kind of like beating around the bush. And we were like, oh, we don't really know if that's his granny actually died or if that's the meme. But we're going to take the serious route. But I'm glad to know it was the joke instead of the serious route because we're like, dang, we don't really know how to take that. We don't want to like make a joke, and then your grandmother actually died. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well, Kinger, and no problem at all. We just didn't know how to take it because we weren't sure if it was a joke or serious, but it was still a pretty good, funny one nonetheless, because both me and Matthew were kind of dying on laughing on that one after the show, because we were like, we don't really know like if we were taking that the right way or not, whether that was the joke or serious, and it became comical after the show because it was so funny how we didn't know what it was supposed to be. But a huge thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the last question of this segment, and then we're getting on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, and this one's going to go to Zyper Sniper 1, and thank you very much, Zyper, for that $20 support, and we do appreciate that. He said, coffee fund for the Enforcers, and sadly, I will not be here on May the 17th, May 16th for you, because May 17th is my country's Constitution Day, and much love from Norway, and long live the LSA. And also, I hate that you won't be here for that day. I'm not sure what day that falls on right there. I would have to check. But also, by the way, thank you for the coffee fund. The coffee has gone through the roof. I'm sure people have noticed that if you're buying like whole bean coffee and stuff like that. The coffee price has gone berserk. I went to go buy some. I haven't bought it yet. I was like holding off and trying to work up the courage to go get some again because the price has gone up. I was like, damn, when did coffee get this expensive? It's literally, it feels like it's gone up 20% or something. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's definitely gone up for sure. But thank you, Zyper. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Zyper Sniper, to the Coffee Fund. And I hope you have a fun time on Constitutional Day, or Constitution Day in Norway. We actually don't have a Constitution Day here in the United States of America. We have Independence Day, which is the 4th of July, which, if you ever get deep into the historical circles, people were like, oh, really shouldn't be the 4th of July, because that's not really when independence. It's like, come on. It's like that was when the Declaration of Independence was authored and signed. They made it to Britain and whatnot, and then we declared independence a little while later in September, I believe. But it's still, July 4th is a pretty good date. In the Declaration of Independence, it's in bold July 4th, so it's like, that's why it is. And the historical people, they sometimes lose that in the details. But outside of that, though, I do have to thank you incredibly for the support, and I hope that you have a great time on Constitution Day. Norway is a really cool country, a great ally of the United States, and the largest oil producer in Europe, mind you all, as well. It's the home of trolls, Vikings, most modern stories, really, that a lot of people find fascinating about Scandinavia come particularly from Norway. So they've had a decent amount of cultural soft influence the world over, and there's a lot of Norwegian immigrants that lived and have actually created thriving communities, especially up in the northern lands near to the plains of the U.S. in places like North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, which also are home to a great deal of Swedes as well. But I do have to say, humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to hear about the amazing holiday of Constitution Day in Norway, and wish you a good time on that day as well. So big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the rest of the news for the night. Moving us on out of the Middle East, we did get to hear, folks, that the mainstream news finally picked up on a story that we covered 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we covered the story. Matthew, do you remember the tragedy of the Ursa Major?
I do remember that, but at the time, I remember we didn't have too many details about it. We were just like, oh, look, it's apparently sinking or something, or it got hit or something like that. Well, we didn't really know what was going on, but it seems like today we might have gotten some info.
Oh, no, actually, we had a couple of rumors back then. We had a couple. Like, one of them was the rumor that actually was largely kind of confirmed a little bit today, which is that it may, like, there was 3 rumors that were going around the time. It was either attempting to carry some form of arms support to North Korea, or it was going to pick up arms support. And the third story, which we said was possible, but we're not entirely sure, and there needs to be a lot more confirmation on it, is that it may have been carrying some form of a nuclear reactor to North Korea from the Russian Federation as some form of a material exchange to the North Koreans to be able to continue to get armed support and personnel from them to continue their war in Ukraine. The Ursa Major went down way back in 2024, which was 2 years ago at this point, in December, mind you all, so quite a long time ago. Now, we actually were able to see, once again, the resurfacing of the videos of the Ursa Major, because for some reason this story finally hit the headlines today in mainstream news, basically 2 years after it happened, which is insane. I mean, it takes them that long to get around to something like this. I mean, we covered this deal on this channel, I missed these 2 years ago. Well, I think December of 2024 would be like a year and a half ago at this point. But a year and a half ago, we covered the story. I remember it vividly, the sinking of the Ursa Major out here. And we said, oh, well, you know, we don't have a lot of info, but here's the 3 plausible stories we have on it. And there it is right there, going down to the stern, once again, in December of 2024.
Did they ever say back in the day, like, what the suspected cause of this disaster was? Because I don't recall. Did they ever say that?
They said something along the lines of, like, the exact reasoning was unknown. It was very vague. It was just basically the ship may have just ruptured a leak or something, or the bilge pump stopped working, and it was, you know, an older vessel or something like that, and so it started to go down. I think that was like some of the stories that came out back then, but that's the one thing we may have gotten some more details on today, because now it seems like that might not be the case, and it was more so foul play, at least involved possibly by NATO. But there's another vessel nearby.
Yeah, I wonder what it would cause that right there. It's interesting. I do remember this fact. There were no military vessels in the vicinity of the Ursa when it had this problem. There were none that I recall being in the vicinity. So if something hit it, I mean, what are the possible options here? It could have been a torpedo. That's an option. Could have been something like that. Maybe some underwater drone or something, maybe. But yeah, I remember back in the day we weren't really sure. But I wonder what hit it.
Torpedo is highly unlikely. Torpedoes have a huge amount of explosive ordnance in them. If it had been hit by a torpedo, this thing would have gone down in minutes. But this thing stayed on the surface for hours from what we know, at least from the sinking of the Ursa Major. So it was apparently some sort of a smaller rupture or a leak that then just eventually sank the vessel, but certainly not big enough to be a torpedo. So whatever it was...
Well, couldn't it have been like a smaller, like, is there such thing as like a smaller yield torpedo that's not like the ones that like literally sink the ship right off the bat, or is that not a thing?
That's not a thing. The submarines' torpedoes are designed to take out a ship in minutes. Like, there's no such thing as we want the ship to suffer kind of a mindset. It's, we want that ship at the bottom of the sea in 10 minutes. So hit it now, have it sunk in 4 minutes, and it'll make the rest of the voyage down to the bottom in the next 6.
What, frogmen then? Like, what are we looking at here? Because there was no vessels in the vicinity.
Could have been frogmen. Could have been frogmen. They may have bitten a little side out of the hull. It could have been anything. We don't really know. It certainly wasn't anything direct kinetic, like, you know, like from, say, an armed craft like a submarine where they launched a torpedo at it. Certainly nothing like that. It had to have either been an explosive that was put on the hull before it left Russia, or while it was outbound from Russia, or it may have been something that was caused by one of the crew members on the ship, or someone that was on the ship that was given the instructions to somehow sink the vessel. So we don't really know, but apparently they're saying that there may have been some foul play involved, according to CNN. The cargo ship Ursa Major, which was carrying components for 2 nuclear reactors, sank under mysterious circumstances in December 2024 off the coast of Spain. According to the investigations, the 50 by 50 centimeter hole in the ship's hull could have been made by a Barracuda torpedo. Only the United States...
A torpedo, they say.
But it's only 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter. I mean, that's like wildly small. I think that's like... What would that be? That would be like 10 inches by 10 inches.
Yeah, but still, it looks like they're also lending credibility to the idea I was having that maybe it was a torpedo. It looks like their investigation also came to that possible conclusion as well.
Let me go look at this torpedo. The Barracuda, what is its explosive? Let's see. Design, developed for close-range defense. It was developed in, presented in 2005, but it never went into development and procurement. So, I mean, this would be highly unlikely because the Barracuda torpedo was a prototype that was unveiled in 2005, and apparently there was nothing farther that was done with it because there wasn't a market for it. So CNN might be just coming out of left field with that one.
Possibly. Could it have been those dolphins? You know, the ones that they were talking about. They said something because the United States said we can't confirm or deny that we have the attack dolphins.
Man,
Also, by the way, I'm joking. Just make it clear for anybody jumps on me.
somewhere out there in the Strait of Hormuz, you hear a dolphin. Mashallah, Allah. Man, shit like man, it's like you never know. I mean, but beyond that, I just don't know what it is because I mean, a 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter hole, that's not large, like by any naval standards. I mean, a normal torpedo is going to be blasting like a 20-foot by 20-foot hole in the side of a ship because they have like 600 pounds of explosives in them. So I don't know what in the world this thing is. And I mean, that is quite a small hole. It could have been anything, really. It may have just been an explosive satchel that was put on the side of the ship with a magnetic charge, and then it went off after a certain amount of time. And it might have been put on the ship in Russia, for all we know.
That seems like the most plausible answer out of everything that we've mentioned so far. That seems like it's probably the case, most likely, because I would imagine that they're probably not doing like very detailed sweeps of the vessel after it takes off. They're probably not doing that. So it would probably go unnoticed if there was something attached for the most part under the surface.
Yeah, I would think so. And also on top of that, if say it was the Ukrainians, they have special forces teams in Russia. We already know that. So they could have had a guy, just, put on some diving gear, go skitter over to the boat while it was at port, plant the explosive on it with a time charge for a couple of weeks, and then it just happened to blow up off the coast of Spain. That could have been done, or it could have been planted while it was underway, which would be very difficult, but a possibility. But I would have a feeling that it's highly unlikely a Barracuda torpedo, because from everything that I could just tell online, folks, the Barracuda's never entered serial production. So if they used one, it would have had to have been one of the very few prototypes they made like 20 years ago, which is very unlikely, and usually weapon systems like those don't survive long enough to be usable like that. You don't put a weapon in storage like that for 20 years and then it's totally fine to use 20 years later with hardly any maintenance.
And also, the Barracuda sitting in the Kremlin. He's not in the ocean.
Man, there's a lot of Barracudas in Congress too. I mean, like, are we suggesting that one of them wanted this? I doubt it. Have y'all seen them lately? They're geriatrics. But anyways, moving us on for this story, we are going to be moving on out of the area of the Balearic and also Alboran Sea, near to the coast of Spain, where the Ursa Major went down, and we're now going to be moving on to the United States of America. We have been able to hear some interesting news out of Baltimore, Maryland today, as it appears that the United States is bringing forward some charges. The U.S. has charged Singaporean Indian firms and foreign Indian crew members with conspiracy, misconduct, and obstruction in the deadly collision and collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. We don't really know a lot about the case at the moment that the U.S. is bringing against these firms and individuals, but it appears that they're now suggesting that this was an act of deliberate sabotage by this vessel, its crew, and the firms that were operating it to try and cause damage to a significant U.S. infrastructure piece near to the area of Baltimore. The Francis Scott Key Bridge is a very important one within the area of the Baltimore Bay, as this bridge allowed for a direct passage on Interstate 695 around Baltimore in its Greater Ring Road. And this allowed for a larger amount of the inner-city traffic, well, not inner-city, but intercity traffic that passes between city and city, or interstate traffic, to be able to make its way around the city of Baltimore without having to directly contend with the inner-city area of traffic. The fact that this damage has been caused has created some delays and also diversions for trucking routes, which has increased some of the shipping rates and whatnot within this local area. But I'm not really sure how well this case is going to work, folks, because I remember back in the day when the NTSB put out its investigation, it stated that it did appear to be an accident, that it was some form of engine failure that led to the ship no longer being under control due to it not having any operational propulsion, and for that reason, the vessel ran aground onto one of the bridge's structural piers and collapsed it.
Yeah, and also just to clarify this, by the way, they're not saying that the ship intentionally did it. They're not saying that. They're simply saying that, and this is according to an AP article I'm reading right here. They said the prosecutors announced criminal charges Tuesday in the deadly collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, accusing Singapore-based ship operator of intentionally relying on an improper fuel pump that contributed to the crash, and then allegedly lying about it to investigators. So they're not saying it was like an intentional act to take the bridge down. Apparently, it was like, it sounds like negligence if what this article is saying is accurate. It sounds like they're trying to find something to charge them with for the most part. I will say, of course, the crash was bad, but I don't know all the details about this, so it's kind of hard to say exactly what they're accusing they've done here, except for maybe possibly negligence. But they didn't do it intentionally from the sounds of it.
Okay, good. I was that's a good thing to clear up, by the way, because I was just going off of what this article said, folks, and sounds to me like they were suggesting that they did something wrong. But apparently the engine failure, according to their claims at this point in the case, is because they were using some sort of improper systems on board ship. So a little bit interesting with that. I'd also have to say, folks, I mean, to think that this crew would ever do anything deliberately like this would be absurd. Have y'all been to Baltimore? I can bet you sweet Bibby they were trying to get the hell out of there, man, because Baltimore, Baltimore is Baltimore. No further explanation needed. But all jokes aside, by the way, I've never been to Baltimore, so I don't know what it's like. But I've heard that Baltimore has a reputation within the greater area around this part of the country as being a bit seedy. But anyways, moving us on out of that, we've also been able to hear out of Washington some other interesting developments as well. For one, inflation is rising, as we stated earlier, and we've also been able to hear that the Congressional Budget Office has finally come forward, folks, with the cost for the Golden Dome. It's estimated at this point, and remember, everybody, everything goes over budget here in the United States, that on budget, the Golden Dome would cost $1.2 trillion to develop, deploy, and operate over 20 years, with acquisition costs alone accounting for just over $1 trillion. That's
Whoa.
a lot of money.
Let that sink in.
Man, let that sink in. It's like a nice, high-quality sink standing at the front door. Like, let that sink in.
Oh man! Also, to my knowledge, the Golden Dome is mainly designed to intercept incoming ICBMs. I'm assuming, or IRBMs. I don't think the thing's designed to shoot down the drones of modern warfare. I don't think, at least according to what I know.
Yeah, it's not made for that. It's actually made for conventional threats like, missiles and whatnot. So a $1.2 trillion defense system to shoot down missiles, which you're kind of seeing that their day and age in modern warfare is kind of coming around to an end, at least in the way it used to be, where it used to dominate the field. Now it's going to be more so for higher priority targets, and drones are going to be used for every low and medium priority target in the modern day, from how we can tell that warfare is evolving. So that's a little bit interesting. It's interesting to see this kind of stuff, folks. 1.2 trillion, because if you ever look into any of these sorts of defense systems, like the Texas towers and whatnot, which are very similar in this form to what this is supposed to be, you will know that all of these kinds of weapon systems like these usually go obsolete before they're even deployed, because it takes so long to develop and field them. And warfare evolves so rapidly in our post-industrial age that there is no way for these weapon systems at this kind of scale and size to be implemented successfully at the prohibitive cost they are, to be able to deal with the threats in the period of time that they were designed for. So I don't even, I gotta say again, this is an unbelievable expense for a weapon system that isn't really going to be around and useful for that long. It might be put into service just in time to be usable for about 2 years, and then it will probably be rendered obsolete by new weapons advances.
It'll probably stay effective for probably the foreseeable future, at least when it comes to that one single threat of ICBMs and IRBMs and stuff like that. But it's like there's a major gap, though, for something that costs this much, for it not to take care of all the threats. That's a little bit of a question right there, because for this type of money, it should take care of everything. It should take care of the drones, should take care of missiles. I mean, it should be an all-around aerial defense system, not just like a one-aspect system where it takes out the missiles. And, of course, if they come out with details saying that it takes care of the drones, like FPVs and things like that, that'll change the entire equation. But right now, according to what I've heard, it doesn't take care of that. So, I mean, this is like spending the entire yearly defense budget on one system, which is, I'm not sure that's ever happened in the history of the military.
I don't think it has, and they would have to probably spend this over the course of years, so it'd be 700 billion diverted towards this thing every year until it's eventually deployed, and then it would cost, hundreds of millions to operate it every year after that. So, certainly not a cheap weapon system at all, generally. And I would also have to say, I'm highly doubtful that this thing would be useful for the cost that it's going to be worth. Because, once again, ICBMs are a threat, but here's the other problem. This thing only detects incoming ICBMs from what we know now. Like, it can detect them and try and deal with them, but the only missile-based system we have to deal with ICBMs is still the GMD, and we only have 50 interceptors in the GMD program. So we built a $1.2 trillion detection system for us to possibly shoot down 30 ICBMs, which is what we can still do now. So if they want to actually make this thing effective just against ICBMs, which isn't really, to be entirely honest with y'all, that big of a threat, because if anybody tried to nuke us, we're going to level the face of the planet afterwards. So, no one's going to probably nuke us at any point in the future. So we're going to spend $1.2 trillion, and we still aren't building out the interceptor base to actually be able to shoot down the incoming ICBMs, which then would cost a whole bunch more money to be able to build out enough GMDs and missiles to be able to shoot down the incoming ICBMs. So if I'm understanding this program right, I'm not really understanding it. Like, I'm not really getting the point of it.
Yeah, and also what an inflated cost. I mean, if this turns out to be the actual cost of the thing, I mean, this is way more than the estimates were. I think the original estimates, what it would cost about 175 billion or something, and somehow it's jumped up to 1.2 trillion. That's a little bit of an oversight, to say the least. So that turned into a super expensive system if that number right there is accurate. But also, by the way, I pulled it up just to make sure here. It looks like the information I'm reading confirms it's mainly designed to detect ballistic hypersonic, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles before they launch and during the flight, and then shoot them down before they reach U.S. airspace. So I don't see any mention of drones here either, which, if it's not taking care of drones, I'm not sure if that system's going to be worth the money, because drones are probably the single most biggest threat that we face right now. ICBMs is probably the least threat we face. Once ICBMs start flying, we're in a whole different ballgame at that point. The real threat, the immediate one, is drones.
Yeah, and instead of actually putting any real effort towards that in the immediate future, they're going to put it towards hypersonics, which, to be entirely honest, from what we can tell, are generally a gimmick. Because if y'all watch the Ukraine war, which many of y'all do because y'all been watching this channel, y'all will know that a Patriot air defense system has been able to shoot down Russia's real hypersonic, the Zircon, a couple of times at this point, and that's not the Kensil, which is just kind of like a half-assed hypersonic where it really isn't one. The Zircon is a full-bred hypersonic from start to finish. It actually is capable of hypersonic flight all the way till impact, and yet a Patriot still can shoot them down. So it's like, what's the point of building this when a Patriot can shoot down incoming hypersonics with a decent amount of reliability? It makes no sense. But anyways, moving us on from that, we've also been able to hear of some other statements coming out of the President of the United States on his flight to China. According to a statement he made today, China's strong, but we're stronger than China militarily.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, generally that's like a pretty decent statement, not the most controversial thing that we've heard today, but we've also been able to hear that they were on the way to China. So we can see that Air Force One was flying over Canada on its way to Anchorage earlier in the day, and I believe it just took off from Anchorage a little while ago, and it's on its way to China again. So we'll see how that goes. But moving us on out of all that, we also heard in the meantime while they're flying over that China said that they oppose U.S. arms sales to Taiwan ahead of the upcoming presidential visit. So that's a little interesting right there. That's something else. Well, anyways, moving on from that, it's now time for us to finally get on to Europe and the war in Ukraine. We were able to hear that up in Greenland today, moving us on into our European news, has been seeing some developments. According to some news that came out today, according to some news sources per the BBC, Washington and Copenhagen have been quietly negotiating the establishment of 3 new U.S. military bases in southern Greenland. The bases would be classified as American sovereign territory, tasked with surveilling Russian and Chinese naval movements through the GI-UK Gap, which is the Greenland-UK Gap. The U.S. currently maintains a single base on the island, the Pacific Space Force Base, a sharp decline from around 17 at the height of the Cold War. So it appears that we're trying to build more bases on Greenland, so looks like for now the whole let's invade and annex Greenland thing has gone to the wayside, fortunately. Moving us on out of that, we've also been able to hear that in France, a B-1 Lancer was spotted on Flight Radar 21 today, flying through France, which is a little interesting. And we've also been able to hear that the United Kingdom is stating that they will contribute drones, jets, and warships to the Strait of Hormuz multinational mission. Moving us on into Austria, we were able to hear that the U.S. is apparently about to get us into a diplomatic spat, not just with everybody in Europe, not just with everybody in the Middle East, but now with the neutral country of Austria. Because apparently, according to news we've been able to get recently, according to Welt, Austria scrambled Eurofighter jets twice in 2 days after U.S. Air Force PC-12 aircraft entered Austrian airspace without permission. On Sunday, the planes turned back to Munich when intercepted. The incident is being handled through diplomatic channels. To explain why this is being done, Austria is constitutionally a neutral country and was designed that way by the United States of America's occupational forces at the end of World War II to once again ensure that another country like Austria, a lot like Switzerland after the Congress of Vienna in 1815, remains neutral. So, recently, we've decided that we're going to try and violate their neutral status by just flying jets through their airspace, which they're now meeting with actual armed standoffs for the larger part, because you can't just fly through a neutral country's airspace just because you want to, generally something that's not really allowed. And neutral countries, by design, are militantly neutral, so they will shoot down aircraft that do violate their airspace without permission, neutrality be damned. So, not really a good thing to start creating a diplomatic spat with Austria, because right now, the U.S. is having an active diplomatic spat with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait. Let's see here, who else? Who else within? Well, no one else in the Middle East, really. So then it's also Italy, France, Spain, I believe Germany to some extent, Britain to a degree, Denmark, and a decent amount of other countries around the world. So maybe we don't want to add to that list anymore. Maybe we want to try and not do things that start to incense more countries into having an active diplomatic spat. I have a feeling that the Secretary of State is pretty busy. I saw him in those Nike little tracksuit thing today, and I feel like he's very busy at this point. So they need to calm it down with diplomatic incidents.
You talking about Rubio wearing that Nike Tech like fleece? You
Yes.
talking about the thing that Maduro was wearing?
Yes.
That was crazy. I thought that was AI at first. He actually like apparently went out and bought a Nike Tech fleece like whole get up and everything, and apparently wore that. I'm not sure if that's like some type of like sneaky messaging like pointed at Cuba or pointed at Venezuela or something. But it is interesting though. That's the exact same outfit that Maduro was wearing when he got nabbed out of his complex.
Man, here in Miraflores. But moving us on out of that, we've also been able to hear that apparently NATO's had a standoff with the Russian Navy today around the area of the Black Sea. A Russian naval deployment has been reported off of the German coast in the Baltic Sea, with the destroyer Severomorsk positioned between Fehmarn and Lubeck Bay, prompting a rapid NATO naval response in the area. According to regional reports, the Russian warship has been anchored in a sensitive maritime corridor near northern Germany since the weekend. The vessel is described as part of a wider Russian naval presence in the Baltic, reportedly linked to the protection of the so-called Shadow Fleet shipping routes and increased escort activity around Russian-linked maritime traffic. In response, NATO has deployed elements of its standing Naval Forces 1 to the region, including the German frigate Saxon and the French frigate Auvergne, which I don't know how to pronounce actually, along with additional patrol and reconnaissance assets. The development comes amid growing concern over escalation risks in the Baltic maritime environment. Just days earlier, Sweden's Supreme Commander Michael Claesson warned that Russia's expanding Shadow Fleet operations and increased escort activity are contributing directly to rising tensions in the region. Claesson said the security situation in the Baltic Sea is clearly worsened compared to previous years, noting that increased Russian naval and escort deployments could be used not only for protection of shipping, but also as strategic signaling. He stressed that such activity increases the risk of miscalculation, particularly as NATO and Russian naval forces operate in closer proximity. So that's a fairly interesting development as well. In the meantime, a lot of people have been hearing about that whole flight to the People's Republic of China by the U.S. officials, including the President of the United States, and a lot of people are wondering what's going to be coming out of this meeting, considering that we've been talking about it from time to time tonight. And before we get on into the war in Ukraine, which we're about to be getting into right now, I want to make sure that we touch on this one. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so now that U.S. officials are officially wheels up from Alaska and they're making their final leg of the trip to China to meet with Xi Jinping, what do you think will come out of this meeting right here? Because they were hyping it up. They're holding off the entire Iran war for this one meeting right here. So what do you think they're hoping to achieve? 59% said China will take some photos with their nice Xiaomi cameras, or whatever that company is that makes those cameras in China. 17% said China will help end the Iran war. And 14% said China will invest in U.S. ventures. So I think ultimately what's going to come out of this, also, by the way, just to let y'all know, they are taking a lot of top U.S. business people over to China. So they're apparently going with the president over there. So it seems like economics is certainly going to be something on the table, but it's unclear, though, why they're bringing them. They could be bringing these businessmen from the United States to try to give China some incentive to abandon Iran, possibly. That could be part of it. Or it could be simply it's just time for it to make some deals. That could be also also some of it as well. But ultimately, though, I thought we were supposed to be getting away from China and trying to decouple from their economy. I didn't think we were supposed to be going headlong into it, so I'm not sure what they're up to with that. I think ultimately it'll probably be some photos being taken. Xi Jinping will sit there looking very astute, like he usually does, not smiling or anything, like he's sort of out of his mind, and that'll be the end of it. Now, China is not going to end the Iran war. They have no reason to do that. And if the U.S. is hoping for it, then they are a little bit lost. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that if we make any business, I'm gonna make this clear, folks. I'm gonna make this exceptionally clear. If there is any business deals that are made with the Chinese that increase economic trade between us and China, then I would have to say that the foreign policy by the current admin would have to be conclusively the most un-American foreign policy that I've seen so far. That would be the crowning jewel at this point on all other foreign policy failures that we've seen so far over the past year, which have been setting the United States back in our position globally. That would be the magnum opus of it all, because we've been talking for years, as everybody would know on this channel, about slowly offshoring all of the offshored industries to other countries that aren't China, because that would be stupid to grow any economic cooperation with a mortal enemy of the United States at this point. Clearly, we need to start decoupling from them or separating from them in every way, including economically. If we see that out of this whole deal, the U.S. starts increasing economic trade and the U.S. offshoring in China, I would have to tell y'all folks that at this point, I'd have to make it openly clear that I don't believe that the current administration has any clue in hell. I'm just going to say this in advance so that way when it happens, people aren't saying we're just trying to diss on the great leader. This is going to be the damn worst foreign policy that we've ever seen combined. We're supporting enemies, throwing away allies. It's going to be horrendous. So I hope that that's not the case, because if that is what happens, y'all better be ready, because y'all are going to be hearing it on this show if that's the case when we find this out tomorrow. But outside of that, I hope that it's nothing. I hope it turns into nothing more than a photo shoot, because that's all it should be. We shouldn't be trying to grow cooperation with China. And we shouldn't be trying to openly try and start a war with them early. We'll let them work on their time, and we'll be ready for them whenever they start a war. But we shouldn't also be trying to increase cooperation in the meantime to make that decision a lot more difficult when we have to make it when China goes to war with Taiwan, which we have to defend. So I would say hopefully we just take some photos, and that's that, and we leave. Because anything other than that would be against our interest if we start to escalate with them or if we start to grow cooperations with them at this point.
Yeah, I hope they have their phones in Faraday cages or Faraday bags or something, because, walking into China with devices unprotected, you know how they like to get a little info from people when people go over there. So hopefully they got their phones nice and protected from all that good stuff right there. You got to keep those phones protected. They said, sir, keep those phones protected.
Folks, I'm going to be blown away if I hear something like this here in the near future, like tomorrow. China is really misunderstood. Really a great guy. She is so strong. Great guy, great country. As a matter of fact, as a gift, we're going to give back TikTok to them. I'm going to be like, all right, you know what? I'm going to tell you, folks, it's going to be hard for me to hold my lip on that one, like hold my tongue to say the phrase right. I'm going to be pretty hard pressed to not say what I'm really thinking at that point.
TikTok, they call it TikTok for a reason. It's only a matter of time till it goes back to the CCP. But anyways, the one thing I'm really worried about though, this whole thing right here, is I don't think China's really looking to strengthen relations with the U.S. right now. I don't think they're looking to do that. The one thing I'm worried about, because this is what's on the top of Xi's mind right now, he's trying to put pressure on the current U.S. president to abandon Taiwan. That's what China's motivation is right now. The U.S., I don't know really what the U.S. motivation is. It's sort of unclear right now what their motivation is. Maybe to end the Iran war, possibly. I'm not totally sure. But China wants Taiwan to get abandoned, and I'm hoping that the U.S. doesn't make the grave mistake of telling China that if somehow we can strengthen U.S.-China relations, then we'll just abandon Taiwan. If we were to say something like that, that would be the most stupid possible thing I've ever heard of. I don't think the U.S. would even go that far, even with the current folks in charge. I don't think they would go that far because, of course, the semiconductors are on Taiwan. And if we hand that to China, then we might just be completely stupid and out of our minds at that point. So we'll have to see.
Honestly, though, that's not out of the question, because you got to remember this is how foreign policy is done right now. China is a very big country. Taiwan's really small. Big country better, little one worse. China. That might be how it's looked at, because, there isn't really a lot of strategy there when you literally just say, Russia big, Ukraine small, therefore Russia win. It's like, wow, that's really just like literally like a second grader's understanding of like the world. It's like, how in the world can you be that like dense to not get that there's a whole bunch of other things going on with countries rather than just their sheer size, on a map. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Also, by the way, they're bringing, let me make sure this is the guy, by the way. Let me make sure. Oh, yeah, they're bringing BlackRock along. Let's see here. So the president, in his tweet that he put out just a minute ago, he said he's bringing Jensen, who's the NVIDIA CEO, I believe. He's bringing Elon. Everybody knows who the hell Elon is. Wait a minute. Tim Apple? Wait a minute. Hold on, bro. Did he really write Tim Apple? Bro, go check this right now. Did he really write Tim Apple?
Where
bro,
do I
no
check
way.
this? Where do I check this?
Go to Twitter right now, bro. Go pull this up. I think he wrote Tim Apple. Bro, he wrote the meme in his post.
Oh my god.
He wrote Tim Apple. Bro, he really wrote Tim Apple, bro.
Bro, someone said Tim Apple made an AI meme of it. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh my god, he wrote Tim Apple. Oh my goodness.
Bro, this is like that.
Bro, hold on.
Oh
Let me go
my
check
God.
this on True Social right now, bro. I gotta go check this out. Hold on a second. Let's see here. Hold on a second. Oh my god, he really wrote Tim Apple. Oh my god, bro. I can't believe this. He wrote Tim Apple. That's Tim Cook, by the way, folks. For everybody that doesn't know, that's Tim Cook of Apple, not Tim Apple.
Man, that's like that joke. It's like, we need to get the CEO of Apple, John Apple, in the room, like something like, oh my god. Oh.
So also he's bringing along some bankers, apparently the GE Aerospace person, and some other people as well. But my goodness, I didn't catch that until just now, until the Tim Apple thing. I don't know. Oh my god. Oh my god. How long has he known Tim Cook to call him Tim Apple? Oh my goodness.
Wait, hang on. I actually didn't read this in full today, because this actually came out. This came out recently, actually, in the middle of our stream, didn't it?
Yeah, it did 30 minutes ago.
Okay, yeah. So I was like, wait a minute, I didn't see this today. I was like, I didn't ever read this, and it's because it came out during the stream. Let's see. So this is actually stating a little bit of what they're about to be doing, and you wouldn't believe it, folks. I didn't read this before I made the statements just a minute ago, but let's read it to see what's being said. So, let's see. Skipping the first part, because of course there has to be someone who's bashed every day, as we all know. In actuality, okay, it is an honor to have Jensen, Elon, Tim Apple, or John Apple, as we're now going to call him, CEO of Apple, named after him, John Apple, Larry Fink, Steven Schwartzman, Kelly Ortberg, Boeing, Brian Sykes, Cargill, Jane Fraser of Citi, Larry Culp of GE Aerospace, David Solomon of Goldman Sachs, Sanjay Mehrotra of Micron, and Cristiano Amon of Qualcomm, and many others journeying to the great country of China, where I'll be asking President Xi, a leader of extraordinary distinction, to open up China so that these brilliant people can work their magic and help bring the People's Republic to an even higher level. So basically, we're selling out the United States of America and offshoring more industry to China. Really bringing back business to America. Wow.
Why would we want to bring China up to a higher level when they're the most dangerous geopolitical rival that we currently have? Why would we want to bring them up to a higher level?
Because this guy doesn't know what he's doing in foreign policy. He has
no damn clue what he's doing.
Like, this is stupid as shit. Anyone who says in the chat that this makes sense, you have no clue what you're talking about. I'm going to say that right now. This is dumb as shit. I mean, this is selling out the country at this point. We have been talking for years, years literally, on this channel about the last administration and how damn soft-handed they were on the Chinese. This administration is now going to go over there and sell the country out to the Chinese, apparently, and make more trade deals with them. This is stupid as shit. I mean, look, folks. I can only say.
Also, wasn't there just a trade war with China? You remember that whole thing?
Yeah,
you remember the whole
last
trade war?
year.
It's like there was just a trade war because they were saying that China was screwing us over. So then there was a trade war. Also, by the way, someone said we're making an assumption. There's no assumption.
It's literally in words, black and white print.
Right, yeah, it's right here. So I don't understand why the hell we'd be saying stuff like that. So I mean, if this doesn't prove that we don't know what the hell we're doing in foreign policy right now, I'm not sure what does.
I gotta tell y'all, folks, I've never seen a foreign policy that's been so damn un-American. And I've rarely ever said that about anyone anywhere, but I've never seen a policy that has screwed over the United States of America more than the current one that's been done by this guy over a year. This is stupid as shit. We sit there and piss off everybody in Europe. We diss on everybody in the Middle East to the point they're getting pissed off at us in the middle of an active war. We blockade the Strait of Hormuz, and now we're going to go and let U.S. companies increase their cooperation economically with the Chinese. This is stupid. This is stupid as hell. I've never seen anything like this in my damn life. At this point, folks, I'd be straight up with you. Anybody in the United States of America could have done a better job in foreign policy than this guy. I'm not even gonna mince words about that. This guy has no damn clue what he's doing. He's selling out the country to the enemies of the United States of America economically, and he's also dissing our allies on every single level in foreign policy that we can, and basically leaving the United States isolated on the world stage, and also trying to help prop up our enemies. I've never like this isn't even an exaggeration. We've literally been watching this now for a year and 5 months. And with this stated right here in black and white, clear as crystal before they even arrive, this makes it clear as hell what's going to be going on. Also, I don't know what the hell this one person's talking about that you're arguing with. Tweets aren't a part of the Constitution. Well, foreign policy and congressional acts aren't either. What the hell's your point? I don't even think you know what you're talking about. But this is getting ridiculous. I got to tell you, folks, at this point, I wouldn't expect anything good to come out of the rest of the tenure that this administration has, because from what they don't know jack shit, and they don't know how to pour piss out of a boot if the instructions were on the heel. That's just clear as damn day at this point. I'm not saying that the last administration was any better, but I can tell you that anyone elected next could be a good deal better. That's for damn sure. But moving us on from this stupid statement, well, before I say stuff that YouTube doesn't like, moving us on from that stupid statement, we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news, considering that wonderful detail that just came out. Anyways, moving us on into Europe, we have been able to hear of significant developments here over the course of the day. We have been able to hear that there has been significant drone attacks that have been conducted over the course of the entirety of the day by the armed forces of Ukraine, as they have been conducting large drone attacks throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation. We have also been able to hear as well within the area of Crimea that the Russian Federation has been attempting to shoot down some drones, but generally to no avail. That's the end of that clip, but letting us hear a little bit of the air defense fire. We also were able to see the Ukrainian armed forces were engaging in destroying Russian drone boats near to the coastline of Crimea today as well, with their own counter-drone forces. And we can see here the Ukrainian drone coming in, targeting the Russian one. And I see a lot of people saying, oh, you can't take the president's words literally. You're clearly misinterpreting what he just said, although he just said it clearly. And clearly he doesn't intend to do that. Didn't he say that he was going to give Zelensky a piece of his mind before he showed up in America the first time, and he did? Why in the world should I have any reason to believe that a written statement shouldn't be believed? That's clearly emphasizing a lot of bias by some viewers who are saying that, because you don't want to admit that that sounds bad, so you're just going to kid yourself into believing that what he just said in black and white text isn't what he said, and he actually meant something else that more so is aligned with what you personally think in your head. Here on this channel, we work off of written statements to the best we can, because if somebody writes something, that generally is what they mean. So I don't know why some people are trying to go out of their way to say, oh, you're clearly misinterpreting the black and white text that just said he's going to try and grow trade cooperations between the U.S. and China. He actually isn't going to do that. Why the hell would I think otherwise? He literally just wrote that. The problem, folks, the problem with the modern world is that whenever something doesn't align with somebody politically, where it doesn't really sound like something they like to hear, they just imagine that whatever was written is the complete opposite of what was written. Instead of decreasing relations with China, that clearly said we're increasing relations with the Chinese. So I'm going to take it for what it says. Now, if he goes to China and he cusses out Xi Jinping, then I'll say I'm mistaken, and for some reason he just, lied out of his teeth in a tweet, which makes no sense. But apparently not, because generally this is laying out the plan of what they're doing, and why in the world would they be bringing along so many major CEOs of major U.S. companies if the plan wasn't to make more trade deals with China and have those CEOs present as the chief executive officers of their companies to immediately agree to these deals on the spot? Why in the world would all that add up to make any sense? It wouldn't. So Anyways, moving us on from that, we've also been able to hear that down near the area of Simferopol, there has been ongoing attacks that have been targeting Russian forces around the area of the city. Moving us on out of the Crimean area, we've also been able to hear that in the area of Orenburg, the Ukrainians also conducted some attacks today as well, which we're able to see in this clip, which I'll be turning down the audio on a little bit. Oh, and actually, we're going to be turning that all
music.
Yeah, I know. I was like, music. But there's the direct impact of the Ukrainian drone right there in Orenburg.
Ukraine got back to it pretty quick once that ceasefire came to an end. They were right back at it.
Man, the Ukrainians said, it might be a ceasefire, but these hands never cease. But moving on from that, we also get to see the still of the explosion, confirming the hit in Orenburg. We also were able to confirm that the Ukrainians have hit the Perm oil pumping station for the 4th time, and the fire is continuing as a result of that direct hit. Moving us on out of the area of the Perm refinery, we've also been able to hear that within the area of Moscow, it appears that the Russian Federation has declared that they'll be attempting to make the Sarmat ICBM operational by the end of the year. I'm heavily doubting that that's going to be the case because the Sarmat only has a 20% success rate per launch of even making it off of the pad, so I'm highly doubting that the Sarmat is anywhere close to operationally capable, and if they did put it into actual deployment, if they tried to fire them off, if they had 5 of them, only one of them is going to successfully launch and possibly make it to its target. Moving us on out of that, we also were able to hear that there was a fire that happened today at the Kremlin, but it was not the Kremlin in the Kremlin at Red Square. It's actually the Izmailovo Kremlin, which is a tourist trap.
Yeah, not the real one, but it's like the Pigeon Forge of like Russia, basically. You know how like Pigeon Forge has like the Titanic like replica and stuff like that. They have all like these gimmicks and stuff. It's basically like that. It's in the top part of Moscow.
So this is the Izmailovo Kremlin, which I'm sure many of y'all can tell by just looking at this picture that this certainly is not a seat of government whatsoever, because it looks more like a circus than anything.
I mean, it could be the seat of government if it looks like a circus.
oh, I see what you did there. That's a pretty good one. But we do have some very interesting things in here that would lead you to believe that this is certainly a seat of Russian culture, like the Museum of the History of Vodka, which, quite no joke, is literally just alcoholism, the museum.
Oh my god. I'm sure they have to put bars in the window on this thing at night.
Bruh, honestly, they probably... Look, you can see Rasputin right here cooking up another delicious brew.
Man, look at that. The old day Rasputin or the modern day, what's his name? Dugin.
You can also see here the Russian bear with accordion and skate shoes, ice skating shoes, and ushanka. Very Russian. We can also see what appears to be a doll in the corner of very odd design and construction, which would lead me to believe that this isn't really for museum display, sitting next to what appears to be 2 dead people on beds. Well, odd, but you know, taste is subjective. I mean,
that nurse right there is dressed up for the club. That's not dressed up for the hospital.
Man, I heard that this nurse has a side job in acting, but it's not television acting. That's what I heard. But who's to say? We can also see here some of the vintage vodka glasses of old, including this one that kind of looks like a bong of some sort, or a rifle stock. We can also see a statue of Lenin and Stalin next to some collectible shot glasses, which is kind of ironic because like hundreds of thousands of Russians were shot by the NKVD under Stalin. So maybe they call these like the NKVD shot glasses or the Gulag glasses. Maybe. I mean, that seems kind of appropriate. They also have a picture of a saint or one of the Russian czars near to some copper or lead mugs.
That's Genghis Khan.
That ain't Genghis Khan.
Looks like him.
We can also see here just more booze, like every brand of it in Russia that you can imagine. Not really a museum when you think about it. It's more so just this person who runs this museum clearly has a problem and they need to get help kind of a deal. It's a cry for help from Russia, but nobody's listening, because they still have this problem. There also is some other great attractions around here as well, including the Banquet Hall Gallery, which you can see right here. This is the Banquet Hall, which is actually pretty nice, but apparently this is maybe one of the buildings that's on fire right now. And we've also been able to see that they have a blue Lenin and a pink Gorky. Don't know what the prevalence of this one is, but you know, definitely a place of culture here in Russia. It appears to be on fire. much to the dismay of many. And we'll have to see what comes out of that as a result, how much of it burns down. But anyways, moving on from those clips on the eastern side of Moscow, it's now time for us to move on out of the interior of Russia and on into Ukraine. The Ukrainian armed forces were able to land a couple of hits today inside of Luhansk. Video evidence did come out showing fires emerging within the city after the direct hits, and we also were able to see as well that inside of Kyiv, it appears that things have turned around, folks. Interestingly enough, y'all know how the United States was saying that the Ukrainians were nothing more than like leeches and, were requiring a whole bunch of support and giving us nothing in return? Well, it looks like now, according to what we're hearing, over the last 2 months, Ukraine has signed defense agreements with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, and the Ukrainians are saying that more deals are in the works. Ukraine's National Security Council projects a defense production capacity of $55 billion in 2026, but to realize that capacity, Ukraine would need much more external financing, and Ukraine is currently only has the funds to buy around $15 billion worth of weapons this year. Technology pioneered by Sign Engineering, a Ukrainian defense firm that recently received a multi-million-dollar investment from the U.S.-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, allows drones to fly without GPS guidance to evade signal jamming. And currently, a memo between U.S. and Ukraine outlines the terms of a defense deal between the two countries. It will allow Ukraine to export its military tech to the U.S. and manufacture drones in joint venture with American companies. So it sounds like instead of the U.S. providing Ukraine military support, Ukraine's now providing us military support. That's a little interesting. Seems to me like...
It sounds like a pretty good deal, though, for both sides. If this turns out to be a real thing, it sounds like they're going to let the Ukrainians start using U.S. facilities for manufacturing. Although I'm not aware if the U.S. really has like a deep manufacturing base. That might be something they're going to have to build out over time, so it might take a little while. But the Ukrainians are going to apparently license build their drones here, and in the process, we'll get the expertise from it. It sounds like it seems like it's a fair trade. It's just I hope the Ukrainians don't come here to do that, and then there's like a switch, and then all of a sudden they're cut off from the places they helped to build and also license and stuff like that. Hopefully it's not like that, but we'll have to see.
But I heard, Matthew, some detractors in Ukraine are actually saying that the Ukrainians shouldn't support this. They said that America is filled with corruption and that there's many people in the U.S. government, including those at the very top, that are using it for their own personal gain, for their own personal finance and their families. And they've also stated that the corruption exists all the way from top to bottom. And clearly, it would be better to support the Chinese than it would be the United States. But luckily, they're not really listening to those people, because if they did, they'd be a lot like the United States of America at this point with their position on Ukraine. Crazy. But anyways, moving us on out of that, we've also been able to hear that within the area of the location unknowns, we did get the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours, which was pretty decent. And the Russians did lose a Bobcat. Hey! Oh, did you say something?
I said,
Oh, it hardly came through. All I heard was, and I was like, I was like, man.
I was happy, okay?
He was happy. The Bobcat was blown up. But according to Ms. Deesa, missing new Category 2 ground robotic complexes. And over the course of the past 24 hours, we have been able to see that 1,020 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 2 APCs, 145 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 72 artillery pieces, 1,252 drones, 2 MLRSs, and 1 Bobcat skid steer, which is a great thing to see and good to know. Moving us on from that, we've also been able to hear that within the Konstantinivka direction, the 28th Brigade has been able to hit some Russian forces in drone-to-drone defense. Take a look at this. They're getting hard into the memes these days. I've never seen them get this hard into the memes, but they're working hard, folks, on really making sure to sell this.
We can't show this anymore. We can't. That's all we can show this, man. Like, this is too much into the memes right here, I would say.
Well, I didn't think so, but moving us on from that, we also got to see the 100th Mechanized Brigade using its unmanned ground vehicles to obliterate some Russian positions near to the area of the Konstantinivka front. And we see them go into the building, and we now see the Russians. And there's the aftermath, bleed. And we now see them once again showing the Russians.
I put them in a box.
That's the box that they're in. And now they're about to put them in smaller boxes called caskets. And we now see the unmanned ground vehicles getting ready for their mission. We can also see them showing them off a little bit to the camera. A simple vehicle for a simple war. The Ukrainians have simplified the war a great deal. Watch. Look how easy it's become. Here's the unmanned ground vehicle just trudging its way through. And it goes into the building, and then the building goes away. See? The whole thing is gone. It's like a demolition team, a one-drone demolition team. And there went all the Russians that were in the building. Now they show the little symbol for the unmanned ground vehicle again. And we see the Ukrainians here, putting the bombs on it, which just appears to be a lot of anti-tank mines, which are in abundance in Ukraine. And there's the aftermath of the building. There went a second one in the building. Just making sure to be a little efficient here. And there goes another part of it that just had a structural collapse. The Ukrainians seem to be getting pretty effective at this whole fighting a war thing without losing a lot of men. The Russians, on the other hand, they're still trying to kind of figure that one out. But a lot of people are hearing about that whole deal of the Sarmat ICBM being deployed at the latter part of this year. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
In the meantime, pull up that little Russian car, that Sarmat little car, the one I'm talking about. Pull a picture of that up in the meantime. Yeah, pull that up. But also, by the way, the poll says Russia is preparing to deploy its new Sarmat ICBM missile by the end of the year. And what are your thoughts? 50% said Russia is just posturing. There's no worry whatsoever. 21% said, Sarmat doesn't work anyway. It doesn't matter. And 19% said that this should be countered by the United States. And I would say, to me, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Russia already has nukes, and this isn't really going to change very much. Excuse me. It's making me allergic, this whole damn nuke talk. But it's really just something else. It's posturing. So I'm with the 50%. I'm not too concerned by it. It's not like Russia's going to start launching nukes tomorrow, because that would be the end of the entire world. But as you can see, though, apparently there were people in Russia that were very fond of the Sarmat. As you can see right there, they put a piece of garbage on top of their car and drove around with it, talking about Sarmat Washington, Sarmat Washington. But unfortunately, what say you?
Sarmat Washington, Washington, and then it got T-boned by a bus, and they haven't had it for years now. But I would have to say it's just generally posturing, and on top of that, the Sarmat doesn't work. Out of all of the test launches we've ever seen them conduct, which are 5, only one of them was successful. The other 4 had significant critical failures during their launches. So that means that it has a 20% success rate. And to be entirely honest with y'all, I would actually encourage them to replace their whole nuclear arsenal with Sarmats. Because if we ever had any question of whether their nuclear weapons or ICBMs work, we would know with a Sarmat that most, if not all of them, don't work. So maybe they ought to replace every single nuke with one of those, because that would give us a decent advantage against the Russians. But moving us on out of that deal and on into the front line once more, we also were able to see the Ukrainians in the 93rd, the famous fighting 93rd, hitting Russian forces on the northern flank of the Pokrovsk front, which we could see right here. Oh, and there they are. Boy. Come here, Russian. Oh, wow, he had a long pole, and he was going, and it didn't look like it worked. But anyways, moving on from that, and on out of the area of Pokrovsk, we also were able to see that down on the southern front, a Ukrainian Mirage 2000 actually dropped a couple of hammers on a Russian position here in the plains. I wonder how that went for him. Oh, well, not well. Not well. The hammers are hammering. That's the end of that clip.
Also, by the way, I just saw this right here. I'm trying to do some more research on it to see if this is the case, but I'm seeing that apparently it looks like some manufacturers are confirming to suppliers that there might be a lubricant oil shortage coming, which means motor oil, by the way. So apparently, I can't tell what's the actual timeline for it or not, but it looks like people are circulating a document from a auto manufacturer, which appears to be giving new guidance about how to function without the motor oil, or how to work around it for the most part. So that's something to watch.
Oh, that's interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that one, because that sounds a little bit concerning. But moving us on out of that, it is time for us to make it up to Kyiv to cover the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1,540 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Шановні українці, українки, деякі важливі речі за сьогодні. Разом з прем'єр-міністром Юлією Свириденко говорили з командувачем повітряних сил по ситуації в деяких наших містах, наших громадах поблизу фронту, про обстріли, які там майже постійно. Особливо важка ситуація в Херсоні. Росіяни влаштували там фактично сафарі проти людей. Треба значно посилити захист, більше перехоплювачів, більше засобів РЕП, більше наших екіпажів потрібні саме там, в місті. Була також доповідь команди, що займається регіональною політикою, віце-прем'єр Кулеба та заступник керівника Офісу Микита. Частково вдається відповісти на виклики, які є на окупованій території Херсонщини, в Олешках, в селах області. Дуже важка ситуація саме на цій частині окупованої території. Дуже складно здійснювати евакуацію людей. І важливо, щоб міжнародні організації, усі, хто здатен допомогти з цим, були задіяні і були активними. Ми обговорили деталі цього процесу. Я вдячний всім, хто старається допомогти нашим партнерам, обласній владі Херсонщині, омбудсмену, команді уряду. Звісно, сьогодні були наші далекобійні санкції. Санкції проти Росії за удари по Україні, зокрема регіон Оренбургу, більш ніж 1500 кілометрів від України, об'єкти російської газової промисловості. Україна говорила про те, що будемо діяти дзеркально у відповідь Росії. Ми пропонували тишу. На жаль, після відносної тиші протягом 3 днів знову удари шахедів, знову авіабомби. Фронтова активність залишається також високою. Тому ми відповідаємо. І продовжуємо працювати з нашими партнерами, щоб дотиснути до дипломатії, дотиснути до миру, як би це не було складно. Я хочу подякувати сьогодні європейським нашим партнерам. Була зустріч на рівні радників з питань національної безпеки. Ми поступово просуваємо тему виробництва антибалістики в Європі. Ми формуємо антибалістичну коаліцію. Варто це зробити. І зараз ми ближче до результату, ніж будь-коли. В сьогоднішній зустрічі країн по антибалістиці були представлені 13 країн і Офіс Генерального секретаря НАТО. Важлива, дуже важлива ініціатива. Загалом зараз українські позиції на фронті та у наших далекобійних санкціях та у спільних результатах з партнерами найвищі за роки. Треба тримати рівень, досягати результатів, і саме це ми і робимо. Кожен виклик, який є при цьому, все, через що ми проходимо, повинно завершуватись одним – тим, що ми всі так чи інакше допомагаємо Україні, робимо сильніше нашу оборону, робимо вигідніше наші спільні українські зовнішньополітичні позиції. Не буває перемог когось одного і не буває стійкості когось окремо. Треба дійти до головної цілі, і це наша спільна ціль, яку ми не здаємо. Ми не здаємо нашу землю, наш суверенітет. Я вдячний усім українцям, усім українкам, хто разом на цьому шляху. Україна має вистояти в війні, захистити свою незалежність, гарантувати безпеку людям. Це обов'язково буде. Слава Україні!
And with that, that's the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1540 of the news from around the world. And it is time for us, folks, with that in mind, to move on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what a news segment it was. We were able to talk about all of the crazy events of the world today and confirm that the president's apparently going to sell out the country to China. Great news, everybody. Real defender of the republic right there. I can't even hide tonight, folks, that one pissed me off to the extreme. So if you hear that in my voice, my apologies, but I actually care about the nation. I'm not a sellout, so that pissed me off a great deal. So we're going to be moving on to the question segment, though, and we're going to be getting to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And we could talk about everything, except for religion, politics, climate change, and whether the A-10's relevant in modern warfare or not. So, Matthew, please, take it away. What do we got?
All right, so jumping into our final segment of the night, which is the final question segment, we have super chats to get to, live chats, and Morse code decoders as well. But in the meantime, though, can you check on Flight Radar 24, and can you see where the Air Force One convoy is at, if it's even on there at all?
It looks like right now Hank 99 is somewhere outside of Anchorage. Is that a part of the convoy?
Is that the E-4B? Is that the Doomsday
Yes.
plane? Then yeah, that would probably be part of the convoy right there. I think it stays within a certain distance, I think, so that must be where it's at. It really hasn't made much progress. It took off like, I think it was like, what, 40 minutes to an hour ago.
Man, they kind of chilling. Wait a minute, I've got to figure out who else we're selling out the country to. Maybe Russia. So I'm sure they're having to figure that one out. Please do not please turn your phone on airplane mode while we're in flight. F that, I've got to tweet stupid shit in my life. But anyways, with that, we are on to the questions. Now that we know where that aircraft is at. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So our first super chat here is going to go to none other than Ella MC Wills Nafo. And thank you very much, Ella, for that $50 support. Very generous of you, by the way. And Ella said, cheers, Enforcers. And I appreciate the work you both do, and appreciate the news, and appreciate the laughs. And take one from the chat. And long live the LSA, and Slava Ukraine.
And long live the Lee Spring Army and Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for enjoying the work and enjoying the news and the laughs. We try our best to be able to give out as many laughs and as much news and as much information as we can every day. And I hope that we've been able to do that tonight, even with the incredibly infuriating news that just came out minutes ago. So a humongous thanks to you so much for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep it running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And we also wouldn't be able to get one from the chat. So Matthew, what do we got from the live chat?
So in honor of Ella, we have a live chat here, which goes to Jenna, last name Tolls. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that good question. They said, did NATO actually sink that ship with the nuclear reactors that we just covered earlier?
Oh, we don't really know. I mean, that's what CNN's saying, but where do they get that from? And then also, I guess their supposed weapons experts like, oh yes, they used a 20-year-old prototype torpedo that was never produced, and it was only a prototype. It's like, I'm kind of doubting that, to be entirely honest, because that sounds to me like one of their weapons experts might have just woke up and just had a lapse of memory or something, because there's no way in hell they used a Barracuda torpedo that was never produced in any actual numbers. So I would actually kind of doubt it a little bit, but that's the story that's running around in the mainstream today, because I'm guessing that they're trying to figure out how to get a headliner. So they were like, let's take this 1.5-year-old story and recycle it, and now let's make it sound like NATO hit the boat when we have no actual proof that we did. So I mean, that's what I would say at the moment. I wouldn't really put a lot of stock into it. But I do hope that does address it the best we can. And a big thanks to you once again for supporting this channel, Ella McWheels Nafo, and helping this channel to keep it running. Because if there wasn't folks like you, then we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Give Up Now. And thank you very much, Give Up Now, for that generous 50 as well. And they said LSA times 4. And also, please take a question from the chat.
And a big thanks to you for the support. Give Up Now. And long live the Lee Spring Army. Long live the Lee Spring Army. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And I thank you greatly for that support, Give Up Now. You're helping us to not give up now. You're helping us to give up later with that support, and helping us to keep making it through these days, how painful they are. I feel like that guy, I think his name was something like Sisyphus or something, that was having to shove that boulder up that mountain in Greek mythology, and it was a never-ending mountain at this point. But I feel as every day we get on air at this point, folks, it's just how much stupid stuff can the president do that we have to kind of bite our tongue on and make it through another day. And so far we've been able to make it through about 1.5 years at this point. And it's getting an update, folks. It hurts. But beyond that, I got to thank you as we were support, and we will make sure to take a question from the live chat in your honor. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so this one, in honor of Give Up Now, is going to go to Lissa, who said, I'm just wondering if those IRGC members are running away from the country now, and is it possible that later they can come back and start the regime again?
As far as the landing party or the aircraft that flew out to Pakistan?
I think Lissa's referring to possibly some of the IRGC that are leaving the country, maybe possibly to go hide out in the meantime. I haven't really heard large scale reports of them leaving the country. Me personally, I'm sure there's been a few, but it hasn't been enough to catch headlines.
Yeah, I would have to say I haven't really heard about that either, and I think that's where a little bit of my confusion was coming from, because as far as the IRGC people that have left, they're most likely lower officials within the IRGC that really wouldn't have that much of an impact, and if they ever try and return home, they'll probably just be executed for desertion. But I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for sponsoring our live chat, Ella. I'll actually Give Up Now and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have here a support from Facts on terrorists. And thank you for that $50 support, Facts. And he did not leave a comment, though. But that was, believe it or not, that was his first ever super chat on any
Hey!
channel on YouTube, by the way, according to what YouTube said when he put that in right there. So a huge shout out to you, Facts, for that super chat and also the super sticker, too. That YouTube creature riding the rocket right there off into the wild blue yonder. But we do appreciate that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, facts, and helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta say, that rocket, that's a beautiful rocket right there. It's kind of like that Sarmat. It only works until it explodes. Kind of like that one. But big thanks to you for your support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. I gotta thank you massively for that. And so big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Glock, who's there, LSA. And he puts in a $20 support. And thank you, good sir, as well, for that support. He did not leave a comment, though, either. But thank you very much, good sir, for that support, as always, right there. We do appreciate that. And even though he didn't leave a comment, we can take a guess at what he was going to say. Some good things. But thank you, Mr. Glock. We do appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you greatly for the support, Glock, who's there. And we greatly do appreciate that. Incredibly. And I also have to say that you're the fella. You're the fella who knows a lot about backstory. Back in the day in the live chat, we always used to watch you drop a couple of them crumbs, and that always used to intrigue us a little bit. It's like, oh, this guy's done some research. We're very good at that. But I do thank you for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but it's greatly appreciative, and it helps us to keep this thing running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
You know, it's always those accountants you got to look out for. Like anybody, it's like, yeah, I'm an accountant. It's like, oh, really? You're an accountant, eh? It's like, accountant is a common cover for things. Like when somebody says, oh, I'm an accountant, that means they keep people accountable. Not necessarily they're counting the money. That means they could be keeping accountability of other things too. An accountant, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Counting the money, counting the dollars and stuff like that. Also, by the way, look at that. Unfortunately, they're typing. I heard the keys. I heard them tapping away at the keys.
Somebody asked that age-old question before you get them, because I don't want this person to be got. I want an answer to this. They just said, "Have you been in the war room? How do you know what they're doing? You don't know what goes on in the meetings." So I want to ask them, "Have you been in the war room?" And I hope that their answer is yes, because otherwise I'm going to say that they're full of shit. I'm just.
Do you need to be in the war room to see the facts right in front of your face and make reasonable conclusions? No, you don't have to be in the war room for that. You know what they talk about in the war room that we're not privy to? It's the very fine minutia of day-to-day operations, which is not necessary, by the way, to simply look at what's happening live at the moment. It's not necessary to come to conclusions. The only reason you need that information that they're getting in those briefings, if you're trying to make very minute operational decisions, which we're not doing, so we don't need that.
It's really interesting to me how these people say, have you been in the war room? And then being in the war room these days with the current admin is literally just watching Hegseth roam Twitter, which is basically us. So it's like, are we in the war room? In a way, yeah. I mean, they definitely look at our tweets. They look at everyone else's as well. So, that's the war room. You're here. So, there you have it. Also, on top of that, it's really stupid to hear that from people who also are in the war room, because it's like, oh, so their grand strategy and you think it's sound? Where the hell have you been in the war room? When were you last in there, common citizen? It's like, because from what I understand, everybody in this chat, save for a couple of people who probably aren't chatting right now, have never been in the war room and are very opinionated, very, very opinionated. Because if I remember in the last administration, everybody was bitching about that guy up and down, left and right, because they knew better than him. But for some reason, now that we have the great leader in charge, now nobody can know better than this guy, which doesn't make any sense. Because the last guy could be stupid, the current guy can also be stupid, because guess what? They're people. And in my running experience at this point, a decent amount of people who are in that office can be particularly stupid in the present day. So it doesn't take minutia and top secret classified intelligence to look at a broader stroke of foreign policy and go, that one looks dumb as hell. You don't need to be an expert to say that.
I have a feeling that they're not in the war room per se, but they're in the war room every day in their minds.
Probably. Let's see. And then they never answered the question. They said, "What happens if it works out?" Well, I can tell you it's not going to work out, because that's what people have been saying about this whole stupid shenanigan with the Strait of Hormuz, and it's been a month and a week now, and it still hasn't worked out in the 30 different attempts that they've made. So I generally can tell you it's not going to work out. How in the hell did it work out with Greenland and the tariffs and everything else so far? How did that work out? Did that work? No, none of it did. So why the hell is this one going to work? We've got a running with I have this thing, folks. It's in most animals that are very close to the simian type, which are the apes, which is where you have pattern recognition abilities. And I have a pretty decent pattern recognition ability. And if I watch one president make 20 different foreign policy actions and all of them explode in his face 20 times over, then I can assume that by the current pattern of a 100% failure rate, then the 21st attempt also has a 100% failure rate. Because I haven't seen any of these things succeed yet. So why the hell would I assume that out of the 100% odds that it's going to blow up in our faces again, that there's going to be the 0.0001% chance it's going to go well this time? I don't really have any reason to believe that, unless if I was extremely biased to the point I couldn't see what's in front of my face and add 2 and 2 together. So I hope that addresses that well, but I don't have to be if you have to be in the war room, to make this clear, if you had to be in the war room, or you have to be in the military, or you had to have been a politician to have an opinion on anything in this country, what the hell's the point of people voting? What the hell's the point of that, really? Because basically everyone's saying that at this point, nobody knows shit and only the people who are in charge know anything. So why not just let them stay in charge for life? Why not have a dictatorship at this point if the people don't have any say or any know-how on anything? Why the hell let you vote? The last president should have been in charge until he died, which probably wouldn't be that much longer from now. But, and the guy before him should have been a dictator, and every single one of them should have been before that. Because that makes sense at this point, because what we're saying now in the public is that the public doesn't know anything, and they're so stupid they don't even know how to tie their shoes, so why even let them have a say in the government and have a democracy? But anyways, we're on to the next one.
Our next one here is going to go to none other than Duncan VR. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that $28 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. All the way from Australia.
Hey.
He said, "Bah, move, crack, war." He said, I got the cards. Slavic KFC, it's finger looking good. Yar, pirates. How's the fatty marmot?
The fatty marmot? The fatty marmot, it's doing well. Oh, we'll have to tell you the story of the Gophers. But, let's see here. Let me go get that marmot. Oh, hello there. Hey!
Oh, hello there, Governor. It's the marmot. He's back again on the rock. He's on the rocks, serving him up like a drink on the rocks. But as you can see, though, he's sitting here. He's just sitting here taking a nice little look around at the things. He's just taking a look around. He's a mouth breather. He's got his mouth wide open. Breathe out the nose. How about it? But anyways, that's all his mama's got to say today. He's not got much to say, eh?
Would you look at that? Would you look at that? It's a fat marmot. Fat marmot with a ass. Huh?
That sounded like you said a curse word. It didn't sound like you said fat. It sounded like you said something else.
I said fat, Governor. Like, that's what I said, and that's how I meant it. What do we got from the fly? Day to death, something. Like, it's like there's nothing, even no content for the fly anymore. The person who we based the fly off of, they just basically dropped all the face of YouTube, so I don't really have any running content for that anymore. But beyond that, though, the Marmot and the Fly, Rip the Fly, great segment, and I got to thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and allowing us to have a little bit of a moment of the Marmot and the Fly, because we appreciate that greatly. And a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Grand Moff Clubby, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Grand Moff, for that $20 support. They said, when I saw the president's statement on Twitter earlier today before clocking in for work, I was livid. I may be overthinking it, but I swear he's doing what a certain dictator did in Germany in the 30s, LLT, LSA, and the Empire. I mean, a president can't make statements that people are committing virtual treason because they're saying or exercising their free speech rights. I mean, at some point, people have to say that's going too far. Like, regardless of political party, there are some things that transcend that, which I would say the Constitution definitely transcends political parties. So, the fact it doesn't get universal condemnation concerns me greatly. The fact that it doesn't. I mean, there will always be the lunatics out there that'll be like, oh, yeah, he's right. Those bastards on that other side. It's like, well, I think every single country that's been through something like this has said that, and then it always comes around to bite them in the ass before it's over with. That party that thought they were protected with their speech ends up getting bit in the ass too, because then their speech gets restricted, and then they're like, why'd this happen?" It's like, I wonder why. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that these kinds of statements these days make me just livid, because for someone to talk about how much they love America, they sure as hell seem like they have no concept of what the hell America is. And it's sickening, because you look at things that have been sacred in this country, like the freedom of speech, the freedom against unreasonable searches and seizures and whatnot, a trial by jury of peers, and you have none, like all that's being eroded away by this one person at this point, quite deliberately, if you really look at it. The things like, weaponizing certain government agencies, obliterating other ones for no reason that didn't even cost any money, doing things that clearly don't look to be in the interest of the United States of America and foreign policy. And you just watch it, and it's so crazy how some people have been brainwashed into believing that this is what the country needs. If this is what the country needs, then the country is needing destruction at this point, is basically what those people are arguing for. Because there's no way that a country can survive on this kind of track of foreign policy with this kind of track of decisions and the way it is. Basically, all of the original founding policies of this country, like the freedom of the individual, are just being suppressed these days, because this one guy who's got, an ego that's just the most fragile thing that he ever seen in the world. He can't take anything. Which is so stupid, because they say that they're party of free speech, and then they can't take any free speech at all. It's ridiculous, really. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make it possible. But me personally, folks, I would say that if you are an American citizen, you should be looking out for the nation's interest, and clearly digging the country an early grave by horrendous foreign policy decisions, and also horrendous decisions on the home front, as far as individual rights and liberties that would lead to the complete destruction of what America was and is not really something that should be supported by any reasonable-minded citizen. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Truck and Chef, and thank you, Truck and Chef, as well for that support. He said, doesn't the president know that China has full-scale aircraft carriers in the desert, that they are actively be destroyed, and actually pats that they move in preparation for war with us? And can you pull them up, Enforcers?
I think you're talking about the simulated carrier decks that they built in the desert. Let me go see if I can pull that up really quickly. China desert carriers. Let's see here. Oh, so actually, it's like an LHA or an LHD that they built in the desert, but there it is right there. And I actually don't know what this one is used for, because I had heard of the aircraft carrier deck, like this one that they had built out there in the desert, but I haven't really seen the LHA or the LHD one that I just saw. But generally, I believe they use these to try and simulate a myriad of things, like how carrier deck operations work for a U.S. carrier, to try and figure out how it would most likely operate and what to do. And also, on top of that, how to be able to strike the carrier, and how to be able to see that their weapons officers on board their strike aircraft know what to target and hit if they were able to get close enough to a carrier of that type. So, definitely not a friendly country. What purpose do they have of building these? Well, clearly nothing good. I mean, that's obvious. So, there you have it. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, Truck and Chef, and we wouldn't be able to try and support the best interests of the United States of America, which seems to be a miss to many people these days. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Honestly, at this point, like some people will be like, at this point, either one of us could do a better job than what's going on right now. I'm 25 years old. I could do a better job than what's happening right now. I am very confident in saying that. I can't say that about every single president that's come around, but I can say about right now, if you put me in there right now, I think anybody could do a better job than what's going on right now, especially with foreign policy, certainly. But moving on to the next one here, this one goes to Give Up Now. He puts in a 20 once again, and thank you very much for the support. They said, vote Quimby, regards from Spike, and take a chat question if time allows.
And I wanted to say, Quimby. I don't know a lot about Quimby. I'll have to look into casting my vote for Quimby. But a big regards to Spike, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. Give up now. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
So the one from the chat goes to none other than Kyle, who said, could a HEMP be considered for the Iranian theater and shutting down all electronics with a burst, low yield enough to keep the EMP from harming allies, but devastating the Iranian military?
Sadly, the only way to do that at the moment is through a nuclear detonation, and the use of nuclear warfare is generally frowned upon in a conventional war like this one, so we wouldn't really be able to do that without opening up Pandora's box for literally anybody and everyone else in the world to use a nuclear weapon if they have one against people who they are inconvenienced by in a conventional war. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Star, who puts in a 20. And a huge shout out to you, Star, for that support. He said, it's me with a big announcement. The skirmish is going great. We're winning like never before. They said, like never before. See, like never before, they say. Do not mention gas prices. Don't mention that. It's going better. I don't care about your financial struggles. Thank you for the attention to the matter.
Well, I thank you so much for your support. Pretty accurate, honestly, at this point. Really something else when, economic issues are growing in the country and then the president says, oh, well, do you care about that? Like, like in your negotiating position, I don't care at all. It's like, oh, well, that's great. Really has the back of the citizenry in mind, making sure to take care of their interests and everything. So now we know how the war plan's going. Basically everyone in the country can live in a shithole at this point. And as long as it's achieving whatever the hell he wants for whatever aims he has, it's fine. That's something else. But I do think
it seems like a strange thing to say that if you're an elected official, you usually don't say you don't care about the constituents. That's a big no-no right there. You don't say stuff like that. That's not good. That's really not good to say that. That could lose midterms badly. All the seats could be lost, all of them. Yikes, it's a tough situation. That's a sick puppy there, I tell you. That's a sick dog.
Well, that's okay, because we're doing this really sweet thing called gerrymander. We're getting Jerry up in here to mander around, so maybe we can try and fix the situation, because nowadays, folks, instead of respecting the rights of the voters, we try and crush them by gerrymandering districts on the left and the right, so that way we can try and suppress voter populations and basically rig the seats in the Congress to go the way we want. It's a great thing.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, of course. And we always have to add that allegedly.
Yeah.
But I do have to say,
we got to be careful what we're saying. You got to be careful. You got to think before you speak. That's what they say, sir. They say, think about it, sir. Think about it. You got to do some free thinking, sir.
We're doing some pre-thinking, we're trying our best, and clearly it's a joke, which is protected speech, and it's a great, wonderful thing that it is, because God forbid if it ever wasn't, that would be a sad day, a really sad day. But beyond that, though, I do have to say, folks, we got to call up that Jerry. We got to get him in here. He's a great guy. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
So our next one here goes to Fax once again, and thank you very much, Fax, for that. Also, $100 support this time, by the way. Huge shout out to you. I think if YouTube's accurate, if they're doing the right thing here in the chat, this is the first time he's ever supported any live stream right here. So we do appreciate a second support of all time from Fax. He said, another live chat question, please.
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Fax. And we will make sure to get another live chat question in your honor. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
We also have here a question from none other than it's Zio, who said, any words on the meeting with China, like what they might discuss, or are we in the dark, LOL? Well, yeah, we actually got it earlier, actually, right in the middle of the stream. Apparently, they're going there to elevate the Communist Chinese Party, apparently, and elevate China to new levels, while the U.S. is sinking down into oblivion right now economically. So I guess that's what they're doing, maybe, unless you're just saying that just to, maybe, fool Xi Jinping, but we'll have to see. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, apparently we're going over there to sell out more U.S. companies and have them offshore in China, I'm guessing. So let's go, U.S. industry. We love it. So I hope that does address that well. And I also just saw someone say, well, treason is not protected speech. I think you're kind of misunderstanding something. Treason isn't speech, it's an act. Like, you have to conduct an act of treason, not speaking treason. You can't speak treason. Like you can't like if someone in this country said, "I hate the United States," that is not an act of treason. They're exercising their freedom of speech, which I generally say it's stupid to hate the country you're from and live in. This is a pretty dumb one. But you can say that. That's also why you can burn the American flag, because it's a protected extension of speech. It's freedom of expression, which also is covered under the First Amendment. While I think that's very unpatriotic and grotesque, you can do that. But you can't speak treason. Like, there's no way to do that. You can act and conduct treason through an act, but you can't do that through speech. Really quickly, let's go pull up the federal statute on treason. Let's go do that. Federal statute on treason. So let's go get this really quickly. So this would be 18 U.S. Code 2381. So let me see if I can go and get this here. Let's see. Here we go. So, treason. Whoever owing allegiance to the United States levies war against him or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death or shall be imprisoned not less than 5 years and fined under this title but not less than $10,000 and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So by this legal definition, clearly you can't just say something and it's treason. You have to do something for it to be treason. So, you know,
There's only been like, I think, less than 5 people in like the last 100 years in the United States that's ever been charged with treason. One of them, I think the most recent one was in 2006. There was a guy who appeared in Al-Qaeda propaganda videos, and I think they charged him with treason. But he never saw trial because he got hit with a drone strike over there in the Middle East. So he was the last one to get charged. But before that, though, before the 2006 case, there was one in 1952. And it was someone, apparently a U.S. individual that was convicted for mistreating prisoners of war during World War II. And he got the death sentence, but it later got commuted. So, I mean, there's only like a handful of examples of cases of treason. Like, that's something rather rare, to say the least. And also very, very serious because it carries with it the possible death penalty. So to bring that up like it's just normal conversation is quite insane.
Yeah, pretty insane, because it's basically just saying anyone who disagrees with me, it can be subject to the penalty of death via what I'm claiming they're conducting as a criminal act, which isn't criminal. And really quickly, also another thing, way back in the day, during the second administration of the United States, which was, let's see, I believe that would be, oh, let me make sure I get his name correct. It was John Adams who was the second president of the United States. He brought forward, along with the Congress, the Alien and Sedition Act, which actually did attempt to try and make it some form of treason to criticize the U.S. government. It was the first time ever, for the larger part, that, and I believe it was the case, let's see here, what was the case? It was some so-and-so versus Adams or something along those lines, but the Supreme Court ruled that you could not be charged with treason or some form of an act or have the government punish you for exercising a freedom of speech to criticize the government. So, you know, that generally has been decided as by a Supreme Court ruling as constitutional speech to criticize the government to any extent or capacity a private citizen or anyone in the country wishes, to any degree at all. Like that's been constitutional law basically since the Constitutional Convention of 1787, basically. So it's really stupid to suggest that people who are saying the war isn't going well are conducting treason. Because you can say whatever you want about the war. You could say that the war is pointless and we don't need to be there. You could say that the war sucks, that we're losing it, we're winning it. America's never done better in a war. This is the most holy war ever. We're bringing about the end times. You can say anything you want, and it's protected speech, because there's no such thing as an act of treason in a statement of speech.
Yeah, it's true. You can't get charged with treason over that. I mean, even lesser charges like sedition, like that requires an overt act too. You can't just convict somebody of treason or even sedition without something of an act.
Yeah, I mean, like that's like the suggestion that you can say something wrong is pretty goofy, because by that kind of idea, folks, wouldn't the last administration have been able to put a lot of y'all in prison who are saying this right now about the current position the president's taking for a lot of things that y'all said in the past about the U.S. government that y'all were criticizing it on, like some things that concern the war in Ukraine or the prior pandemic, things where y'all criticized the government greatly. Couldn't they have also charged all of y'all with treason in the last administration if they worked off of that mindset? And wouldn't that be rather unconstitutional to do something like that? And it would be. And for anyone to act like it wouldn't be, you're out of your mind. Like you've gotten so far down the political Kool-Aid route, you can't see straight anymore, because clearly any sort of an insinuation that criticizing the government over any point, from any end, from any political angle, and making that seem to be a criminal act is absolutely absurd, because it completely upends the democratic system we have, which is a system of criticism. That's how democracy functions, is criticism. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Truckin' Chef. And thank you, Rose Truckin' Chef, for that $20 support. He said, I'm just as pissed as y'all enforcers. Our country should never be sold out, left, right, up, and down. And long live the Leaf Spring Army. And also, I try not to show it, like how pissed off I am. I try to keep it under wraps as much as possible. But I really am not happy whatsoever about the current trajectory that the U.S. is on right now in foreign policy. And also, I'm not happy about generally how the American people are being forgotten about. This is universal right now. If anybody's being honest, I mean, is anybody taking care of the problem of the rising food costs? No, they're not. Is anybody taking care of the problem of the rising house cost for young people trying to buy a home, for like a starter home? No. And in fact, it said that they're doing the complete opposite. They're trying to keep prices high, so that way current homeowners can, have good values on their homes. Is anybody taking care of the used car prices matching new car prices that are continuously rising? No, nobody's tending to that. And nobody's tending to anything. AI is taking jobs. Also, now we're apparently trying to make more deals with China to put more jobs over there instead of in America. Completely opposite. The American people are definitely on the lowest of the rung right now when it comes to being a priority. So I'm not happy. I'm not happy. But I try to hide it as much as possible because, you can be mad about it. You can just wait around till the next election. Until then, basically, I'm just waiting until the next election, basically. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say that it's something else. It pisses me off to no end, because the last, and I can't say this enough, that the last administration was very aggravating in its own regards because of how it was handling foreign policy. It would have an inkling of going in the right direction, but it would hardly go any farther than just taking one step in the right direction and stopping there. The current administration takes every step in the wrong direction and then travels about 100 miles down that road and then keeps going. And then if you ever say, hey, this doesn't really look good for our country in the long term, they call you a liar, an idiot, a stupid person, a treasonist, seditionist, and whatnot, and everything else that they can imagine. It's absurd that we live in a country like this these days, where an elected official acts like they're above everybody else and everyone's but a common fool in front of them, when in reality it's those common fools that put them in that position for them to act like they know more than everybody else and they're better than thou, which is really aggravating to me. And it's also more than aggravating to watch stuff like last year. We're in a trade war with China with 275% tariffs. Now this year we're going to start increasing trade with China. Make that make sense. Make that kind of bipolar, insano crap make sense. And no one can. If you are actually thinking with a level head, there's no way that China can go from being a trade threat and an enemy last year to a friend this year that requires us to grow trade farther with them. They're either an enemy or they're a friend, and that doesn't change over the course of a year. This isn't The Apprentice or whatnot, where you're doing great, you're not, you're fired. That's not how foreign policy works. Foreign policy works on a track of decades. Someone's a friend over decades, they start becoming not a friend over decades, and then they're an enemy for several decades after that. It's never just over the course of a year.
I just wonder what for the people out there, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. So if you think this, I'm not saying anything about these people. I have my own opinion, but I'll reserve it. For what's the breaking point for certain people out there that say, oh, it's going fine. You're just being a panicking, as they call it. It's like, will running out of motor oil do it for you? Will not being able to buy any protein at the store, like ground beef, chicken, etc., because it's too expensive, do it for you? Will not being able to change out your car because even used cars on the used car market are going insane because new car prices are so crazy nobody can afford them. What will it be ultimately? Will it be losing your job because they're laying you off because AI is replacing your job and they're not coming up with any solutions for that? At what point do the people that are out there saying, "Oh, you're just being a panicking"? Eventually it's going to hit your wallet book. Eventually, it's coming.
Right
At this
now.
point. at this point, even if the Strait of Hormuz reopens right now, it's coming anyway. Nothing's going to stop it. That the projections show that. It's just a matter of we're waiting out the inevitable at this point. So we're going to see what everybody's breaking point is for this stuff right here. But I have a feeling eventually, once it hits their pocketbooks, I have a feeling you'll be seeing a bit of a flip. They'll be acting like they never said anything else prior.
Yeah, I have a feeling they probably will, maybe, but you know, it's just so damn frustrating to watch this stuff go on. And then and then you also have like loons, the brainless or the thoughtless, like this one always gripes with these two never solutions. We have solutions every time we complain because I live by the Teddy Roosevelt claim, complaining without providing a solution is just whining. And so whenever you complain about something, you have to bring up a solution. But then little brainless, thoughtless people like you sit here and think that if you criticize and then you provide a solution, the criticism's all that you care about. It doesn't matter if we gave a good solution that achieves what they're trying to go for, but also doesn't bring out the American public drive for every dollar that they have in the meantime. Oh, how dare you? I'd rather go broke to let this guy do nothing basically than ever say that the guy is doing something that might hurt us all. God forbid. I mean, like this guy's ego and this guy's public image is far more important than my financial well-being, is what people say these days, which is just so damn backwards. It's like I find my financial well-being and my well-being as a citizen in general at large, holistically across all fronts, to be a lot more important than the president, regardless of who they are, saving their public image and looking good. What good does it do me for them to look good if I'm broke? Or y'all are broke? What good does it do? It doesn't do anyone any good. That's why I don't get this political tribalism these days, because the political tribalists will let each party run the nation into a ground one turn at a time, and the whole time they'll sit there and act like they can't say that that's happening. They've got to pretend like everything's fine, although they're also going broke with everyone else. It's stupid. But anyways, a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Zio, and Zio said, after this war is over, will it be over? And I'd imagine we'll have to continue fighting them till the end of times at this point, until an administration stops it and gives them money to rearm. I think this whole thing right here, the U.S. has gotten themselves into a quagmire here with this, mainly, like we've been saying for weeks now, because the Strait of Hormuz was an oversight. They didn't properly plan that out. They just went into it like it wasn't a big deal, and that was probably the biggest thing they needed to worry about, was the Strait of Hormuz being closed. So if we can get control of the Strait of Hormuz, we will have a lot of leverage over the situation, and things might change for the better. But until that happens, though, we are in a no man's zone until that happens then. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, I mean, I guess we would have to fight them indefinitely at this point because, well, honestly, at this point, we might just let them control the strait forever and never really deal with the situation with how it's looking because they're so damn hesitant on doing anything at all. I would doubt that they're going to do anything in time. I guess that's how it's going at this point. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from the console who said, hello, Enforcers. I saw that someone suggested a different YouTube channel on one of your Twitter posts. He's a fighter pilot with several years of experience and covers the Iran war. And have you ever heard of him? And I have heard of him, by the way. And also, by the way, I'm not trying to, start beef with another YouTuber, by the way. I had heard that he might have said something about us, but I didn't hear it directly, so I don't know what he said. But generally, I'll say this. I really don't watch other YouTube channels because I like to come up with their own original analysis here on the channel. So I try not to listen to it. But I'm going to refrain from commenting on it just because I'm trying to keep the peace. We've turned a new leaf and we're trying to keep the peace out here. But Enforcer, what say you?
I also heard that as well. One night when we were running the stream, there was like 7 people who came in and mentioned that specific channel and said they said something about us. I don't know. I just didn't really care to look into it because, if they did, so what? But outside of that, I would have to say that generally I haven't really looked into that channel a whole lot. I mean, that was literally the first time I ever heard of it, and I just don't really have much of a comment to say on it. But a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Maxwell Conan, and thank you very much, Maxwell. He said, hi, y'all. Chinese speaker here. The word reunification does not exist in Chinese. Tongyi means unification. And China is just going to use the time to press their lame claims over Taiwan. Oh yeah, 100%. That's what I was saying earlier too. You're 100% dead on the nail. That's all China's concerned about. Everything else is just a red herring for China. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, China's definitely going to be pressing that. But if the president of the United States is bringing over a whole bunch of CEOs, then we know what approach they're taking. Let's make money. Let's make a deal with our enemy. And so we'll probably see that start tomorrow. Because once again, folks, what's the point of all of these CEOs going on a trip to China with the president if it's not to make business deals with the Chinese? Clearly, that's the point. Otherwise, why are they going? There's no reason for them to go if they're not doing that. I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But I have a feeling that China is going to be on the whole Taiwan deal, and we're going to be on the whole deal making end of things. Which also, I got to say, that's a little bit interesting because if I remember correctly, folks, and I'm just saying things, not being politically or, but I got to bring up some of the talking points that they had during their campaign because it is a little important. I mean, these are promises they made to the U.S. public, and they always say promises made, promises kept. Where they really kept, they said they were going to try and bring industry back to America. So now we're going to bring all of these industry heads to China to go make more deals with the Chinese to offshore more American production into China. Does that really sound like it's bringing back industry to America or removing it and sending it to China? It sounds to me like it's sending it to China. If anything, we should be trying to get the industries offshored into other countries that are not China. Maybe this would have been a good visit to make with these CEOs to, say, Mexico City to see if they could get some of these industries offshored there. Because I feel like that would be a lot better to have those industries manufacturing in Mexico, which is a generally American-aligned country, than China, which is the head of the enemy sphere that is currently going up against us and trying to undermine our interests and influence in the world right now. So definitely not a country we would want to grow relations with. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see everybody in the chat talking about, oh yeah, guys, still steer clear of the YouTube beef, and we do, like 100%. Some guy came at me yesterday on Twitter. He's a YouTuber whose channel is apparently dead. I checked into it. I was like, let me go look at this guy's channel. His channel is like, pretty much non-existent anymore. But he was like, I think this dude's like 45, 50 years old or something like that. He was acting like he was a teenager. Like I'm like, come on, bro. It's like, bro, you act like you're in high school and you're like 45 or 50 years old. Yeah, it's just. I'm like, geez, man. I'm like, come on, you're old enough to have like worked your way out of this, like this immaturity, wanting to brawl and stuff like that. I was even trying to take the high road. And also, by the way, I'm 25 years old. I'm fresh out of high school by what, 6 years or something. I was more mature than this dude. I'm like, it's one thing I don't understand about people these days is like if someone tries to take the high road, like for example, like I did with this guy, I was like, well, we're obviously on different pages here. Like, let's just agree to disagree and we'll just leave it at that. We don't want to make it personal. And then they continue to go dig the hole deeper and start lobbing personal insults at 45 years old. It's like, what does that say about, what does that say about growing older? It's like, that just goes to prove the point we were trying to make before. Just because someone has age doesn't always mean they have wisdom. Like, it doesn't mean that. Like, there are generally some people out there that are higher in age and they actually do have legit wisdom. And you can tell those people, like, when you hear them talk, you can realize that you're like, okay, they're wise. They've learned stuff through their life. They didn't just like go through it like a dummy. They actually learned some things, learned some lessons, etc. But, there's some people out there that never learn. And that they can be 60, 70, 80 years old, and they'll still be as stupid as they were when they were 20 years old. So it just depends on the person.
One thing though that is particularly interesting about these people like that is that they cling like to a certain certain political beliefs. And we've run into all of them from the left and the right, but they'll cling to those certain political beliefs like their life depends on it. It's like their whole emotional well-being depends on them clinging to this belief of this thing, and that's something that's really interesting about them is that they never debate anything off of notes of substance like facts or statistics or information or legitimate analysis. It's always off of feelings and opinions from all of them, and you can tell immediately once you run into someone like that because everything is just overblown emotionally to the extreme. Like, Iran isn't good because, Iran be evil. It's like, well, yeah, we can all agree on that, but it's like, how are we going against the forces of evil right now? And it's like, there definitely needs to be some improvement. So beyond them being evil, there needs to be more detail and substance than that.
And also another thing I've kind of learned as well, when you see somebody is too willing to fight and brawl, like it doesn't really matter what the age is. If they're like 60 years old, 40, 20, whatever it is. If somebody is too eager to brawl, that's usually reflective of how their life's going to a large degree. Like their life is either miserable, they're either not having what they thought they were going to have at that certain age in life, and they're just trying to take it out on somebody. It could be the topic could be politics, it could be like the military, it could be anything. They're just looking to take some anger out on somebody. And that's something I'm realizing today. There's a lot of miserable people walking around every single day, and they just latch onto something. The most easy thing to latch onto these days is politics, and some people will jump in one camp or the other, and that gives them the perfect outlet to start brawling with somebody else because politics literally breeds fights. And that's what politicians know, and that's why they use it to win elections. So they know people want to fight, and they leverage that.
Yeah, to a destructive degree, on all ends, unfortunately. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Luke Zitting. And thank you very much, Luke, for that $10 support. He did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that very, very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to you for the support, because we do greatly appreciate that support, and it helps us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from none other than Truck and Chef. And thank you very much, Truck and Chef, for that $20 support. And Truck and Chef said Amazon has opened their industry to the public in transport, lower rates for most of us in trucking. We need to bring back the Trust Buster. And can you elaborate, Enforcers, on the Trust Buster, Roosevelt?
And I would have to say that trust busting is something that was actually a really revolutionary concept back in the day, because back during that time, and I got to say that this is something a lot of people don't really think of, because a lot of people always say, oh, the country is cooked, it's over. And honestly, I kind of got to be honest with you. I mean, if it keeps up at this rate and it never changes, it is. But it was very similar to this in how it existed back in the 1890s and the 1880s, which is called the Gilded Age. And I would highly recommend that a lot of y'all look into the Gilded Age and read up about the history of it in the United States, because it is exactly the kind of world that we live in today. The country was basically run by the top industry heads, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, all of those guys. And they were the ones who basically lobbied the government, and the government never represented the interests of the public anymore. It only represented the interests of the businessmen. So a lot of people got sick and tired of it. Also, another thing that's kind of funny, folks, and this is something that really makes it very similar to the modern day, is that a lot of these really wealthy businessmen realized that the public would hate them if they really knew what they were up to during the Gilded Age. So you know what all these wealthy businessmen did, Matthew, back in the day? It's basically what the ones did nowadays.
They form like economic alliances.
No, they bought up all of the news companies so that way they would only print positive stuff about them and never criticize them.
Oh, well, I thought that never changed. I didn't know that changed.
Oh no, it changed at some point. It changed at some points afterwards, like during the 1920s to the 1970s. There really wasn't a whole load of that. Like it was kind of there to some extent, but not really. But outside of that, though, they bought up all of the news companies back then to make sure that they printed only positive press. Which y'all notice that nowadays, because a lot of these ultra wealthy people either own the mainstream news companies or they own some of the social media outlets that people talk through. And it kind of makes sure that certain things are geared to sound positive about them. But people eventually got tired of it. And so they voted in what at the time was pretty radical, a populist Republican candidate, who was Teddy Roosevelt, and then he became the president of the United States. Actually, sorry everyone, correction, they actually elected McKinley, and then McKinley got assassinated, which led to Teddy Roosevelt getting his first few years as president, and then he won re-election, and was the president from 1900 to 1904. So he was very radical for the time and really believed in balancing the interests of industry but also the interests of the citizenry. And this was actually well seen in the trust bust actions, which is where companies that held a monopoly stake within a certain industrial sphere had to be broken up to be able to increase competitiveness within the economy and to make it easier for people from the bottom to be able to rise to the top. And so back then, things like Standard Oil were busted up into a million pieces. A lot of those companies that were once Standard Oil are still around to this day, but they were busted up. And a decent amount of other major companies and major industries were also busted up as well because they had a monopoly share. And what that did back in the day is that it made the industrial sphere a lot more competitive. Think about it, folks. Even with these companies still existing to this day, there was a lot more of them at that time after the trust bust actions had been taken. And so there were a lot more managerial positions to hold, a lot more CEO positions to be had, and a lot more ladders to be able to climb for common folks like us, like all of y'all and me here on this channel. And that's what made the economy a lot more successful then and made social mobility possible. Once you allow a monopoly or a company to create a monopoly within a certain sphere, you're killing competition. Everybody either has to work in that company, meaning that they have no reason to elevate people up the ladder, and there's really not a lot of ladders to climb. There's, several million people trying to climb one single ladder, and there's only so much room on each step of a ladder, of course, only for one person. Or, if you try and start a new company in that category, that one company that's there is so competitive, it just crushes you like an insect, and that's the end of the story for you. You're a failure at that point. And so I would say generally, there needs to be a lot of trust busting actions taken today. I would honestly say though another problem with that is that the antitrust laws of back then are for legitimate monopolies, like companies that pretty much hold like 70% of the market share or more. I feel like these days that really wouldn't apply, especially in most industrial categories, and I feel like there should be a new round of antitrust acts that are made that start to target companies that even have a minority market share, like say 40% or 30%, because a lot of those companies are pretty much operating as pseudo monopolies at this point, even if they don't reach like the actual threshold of being a monopoly. So I would say that there definitely needs to be some action like that. It would be very conducive and beneficial to the U.S. public, and it would be beneficial to the economic competitiveness that we have in this country that made it prosper so successfully to where we are today, which is where we have this problem rising up once again because of our success. But a big thanks to you for support, Truckin' Chef, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you very much for supporting the channel. And also, Truckin' Chef just threw in another 5 and said, thank you for explaining the trust bust. We need that now. I definitely agree. In some industrial categories, it is woefully needed, desperately needed, as a matter of fact. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Luke Zitting, and thank you very much, Luke, for that $10 support, and we do appreciate that. He said, for the sake of the naysayers, could we get a refresher on the intel and evidence that we had on Iran building a nuclear weapon and justifying the war, and particularly not from Israeli intelligence? So here's what I have, and maybe the enforcers can add something to it here in just a second. So the Iranians violated the JCPOA by not allowing nuclear inspectors to some of their secret nuclear sites, where it turns out they were enriching uranium. And right now, the estimates are that Iran has about, I think, 600 kilograms or a little bit higher than that, maybe up to 1,000 kilograms possibly of highly enriched uranium. And there's no other usage for that other than weapons. Like, you don't use that stuff for normal nuclear power generation. You don't use it for that. That's solely for weapons use when it gets enriched that type of level right there. So that's pretty blatant evidence right there. Also, by the way, another thing that happened as well is generally the Iranians were going on TV and they were saying death to America, and they refused to back off their nuclear threats over and over and over. And some of their guys were even saying they would not back off developing a nuclear weapon. They said that directly. So, I mean, that's pretty, between those two things alone, that's pretty clear. So, there's this popular opinion out there that Israel's trying to put forth the idea that Iran wanted a nuke because, of course, Israel wants to, dominate Iran because Iran's their primary threat. But there is truth to it, though, definitely. But Enforcer, what say you?
There's a lot of truth, like Matthew was saying. Those are some very key facts about them trying to create a nuclear weapon. And on top of that, I mean, we don't even need evidence. I mean, their government officials publicly stated, much like they are right now, and they were back then, they're working towards a nuclear weapon and they're not going to stop. And that's more than proof that we would need. Because, if you say, like, for example, for a police officer, if they're investigating a murder, it's good to have evidence, like the body or a murder weapon or, articles of clothing with blood on it, or, witness statements that say that this person wasn't where they were with where their alibi stated. There's another thing, though, when the murderer goes up to a police officer and says, I just killed a blood down the street. Like, that's generally the most surefire evidence you have that this person has definitely murdered someone at that point, because they're admitting to the crime. And with Iran, a lot of their government officials are those murderers basically confessing to a murder. They're confessing, and have been for a while now, that they're working on a nuclear weapon, and they've stated multiple times, we're not negotiating about our ability to produce a nuclear weapon. We will produce one when and if we want to, and that's right now. And they've been saying that before the war started for months. I mean, we would quote those statements weeks and months at a time on air because they kept making them. Multiple different officials did, and we'd be like, there it is, there's the evidence and the proof, they're making a nuclear weapon. Their government officials are saying that. And some people might say, well, they're just trolling. Well, that's a stupid idea to troll like that. That's how you get your country in a war.
Yeah, really. You don't want to. The United States has invaded countries for less than that. It's like you definitely don't want to take it to the extreme and start saying stuff like that. But I mean, here's the thing, folks. Like for the people out there that say, "Oh, Israel dragged us into a war," I mean, I will admit. Israel would like to drag us into a war. I will concede that. Israel, it likes to fight. They like to do away with threats preemptively, sometimes a little too preemptively, and they get carried away. But, I mean, can we deny the fact that Iran is out here on state TV, literally chanting, like with a huge crowd of people, talking about death to America, and then also refusing to back off the highly enriched uranium? I mean, you can put 2 plus 2 together. I mean, that's not a good sign right there. And we don't know exactly how far along they are. The U.S. intelligence tries to estimate how far they are to actually developing a nuke. They don't truly know. They just have to basically guess at it. And that's enough doubt right there to basically prompt the situation we're in right now, which is a war.
Here's a situation that I think a lot of people aren't understanding with Israel. Say that you are in one house and you're America, and then Israel's your next door neighbor living in the next house on the same side of the street. Across the street from both of y'all is Iran living in their house. And right now they're getting a whole bunch of backpacks filled with bombs, and they're putting them in on the property line between you and Israel. So then Israel goes, oh yes, they're making a nuclear weapon to blow both of us up. Some people in this country go, damn Israelis, they're trying to drag us into a war. It's like, well, if the Iranians blow up the giant pile of backpacks they have on the property line, they're going to take us both out. Like, that's kind of the problem that I think not a lot of people are seeing. Yeah, Iran would probably want to nuke Israel, but they also equally want to nuke us. So regardless whether the Israelis want to drag us into this war or not, it's an American national security concern. They're also wanting to nuke us, not just them. Like Iran, for people who act like Iran's only problem is with Israel, they chant, like Matthew said, death to America and death to Israel in the same gasp of breath. So we're put in the same camp as the Israelis with the Iranian government. They want us both dead. So if the Iranians are creating a nuclear weapon, their number one and number two target equally is us and Israel. So clearly that makes it a national security concern for us if they're making a nuclear weapon. That's why we have to intervene. Because we don't operate in America, or we shouldn't be, off of the concept of some country out there is trying to create a weapon that's going to kill millions of innocent people in our country, and we're going to sit back and do nothing and let them make it, and then eventually they might use it and kill millions of innocent Americans. We generally try and preempt actions like that and stop them from happening before they happen. So I hope that does answer that well for the naysayers that say, oh, well, Iran wasn't making a nuclear weapon. It's like they sure as hell were. I mean, everything they said pointed to that. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here a $10 support from Star once again. And thank you, Star, for that 10. He said, I'm here again. Yeah, once again, we're here. Back at square one. They call it square one for a reason. It's the first square. That's why they call it that. I am not selling out. I am not. You can expect a lawsuit in the mail. It's a beautiful mail. They call it mail, not like female, but mail, like, paper. What a wonderful word it is. Mail or package or paper thingy. That's what they call it. Thingy, too.
I gotta be honest with you, that post office is really a waste. We ought to put that into a private company that does it at insanely jacked up rates. That would be greatly better, because we all know that the mail is a scam. It's a terrible scam. Who needs to give birthday cards to their family members? Stupidity, if you ask me. Who has family? Not me. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Shell Angel. And thank you very much, Shell, for that $10 support. They said, hello, Enforcer Fam and Matt. And just getting in. And can I please get an update? And that includes the sailors on the George W. Bush, as I have family on there. And I have several family members deployed currently.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the support. And right now, the Bush and the Lincoln are generally just supporting the blockade. From what we know, it's somewhat lower intensity air activity that they're conducting right now, and they're in very much a position of safety. So nothing will happen to them. And they're far enough away from the blockade line that we know of that if any threats came in, they just start sailing south and get out of there before anything could happen to them. So they're in great standing right now. The George H.W. Bush and the Lincoln are perfectly fine. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that your folks stay safe over there. And a big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Treetop, and thank you, Treetop, as well. He said, I am an accountant, and my family is also spec ops. There's no distrusting us is a good idea. We have all the facts, and thanks for what you do here in LSA. And I think they even made a movie called The Accountant. I can't remember who the guy was in that movie, who was the star of it or not. I can't remember his name. But I think they made a movie like that about that. So that accountant stereotype right there, that's a real thing right there. They like numbers, they like money, but more importantly, they like secrets. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say, you're going against folks like that, that's not a good idea. I'd have to agree. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And I also saw someone say, Israel's been claiming Iran is mere weeks away from a nuke for 40 years. Yeah, I mean, that montage of Netanyahu in Congress saying that for literally 40 years doesn't really do a lot to make them seem credible. And I mean, like, to be entirely honest, like, listening to the Israelis about going to a war in the Middle East, Israel wants to go to war with everybody in the Middle East. So they're not really the group that you want to go to listen to on any point of reason and go, yes, this is something necessary that we must do as the United States. But on this one, however, because most of the other stuff, it's like, that's their problem or there is no problem. But on Iran, however, they actually do have 70% enriched uranium. That's not Israel's claim. That's not even our claim. That's the IAEA's claim, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency. And they're the UN body. Huh?
And remember, Russia confirmed it. Russia offered to take it off their hands.
Yeah, so Russia confirms it, which is an enemy of the United States. So they confirmed that there is a threat because they're working on enriching weapons-grade uranium at that point. The IAEA, which is the UN body, which is completely neutral, mind you all, and generally the UN takes a fairly balanced stance to the point it's even kind of biased against the United States. They said they had 70% enriched uranium. So by all accounts, outside of Israel's intelligence or ours, they're clearly enriching uranium at that point to make a nuclear weapon. By all external sources that wouldn't be biased towards Israel or us to justify a war. So off of that, I mean, I get what people are saying, and really, to be honest with y'all, I really wouldn't take Israeli intelligence with even a grain of salt. Basically, like they'll say anything to get a war going at all. But with this right here, this war was necessary to conduct at the time we're conducting it, and we were saying that before this war started, or before this administration even came into office, about how much of a threat the Iranians actually do pose to the United States of America, from what we could tell. But with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from DWRB, and thank you for that support. He said, have you ever considered the wonderful world of model trains? Everything you see in real life could be yours at the tip of the fingers in a miniature, and all of Utah could be your empire in your basement.
Model railways is something that I really do like. I really do like. Matty can tell you. I love them. I love them. And my favorite model, folks, I actually have two favorite models of mine. It's either the Norfolk Southern AC44 C6Ms, which, you know what, that sounds like a fax machine. Let me pull it up. Let's see. Norfolk Southern AC44 C6M. So this is one of my favorites right here. Love these. These are great, fantastic even. Look at how beautiful they are. Let me go get this one. L and N GP40. Let me go get this one right here. This would also be equally favorite, the L&N GP40s. These are my favorite. I really think they're cool. I love the L&N, really cool history with that railroad. And the Norfolk Southern's really cool too, because it takes the giants of the Norfolk and Western and the Southern, and also a whole bunch of other railways as well that make up them, like the Wabash and the Erie Lackawanna and all that. Puts them together into one. And
what do we have here?
Huh?
Oh, holy moly, what do we have here? A train rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's what the viewer requested off the menu. Like, what the hell? Like, man,
DWRB. Let me tell you something. Yeah, we have to vary it up. We have to vary it up. We have to get a little something different than just wheels on rails. You know,
man,
they
we talked about
rails we call
airplanes
them.
on Sunday, bro. We varied this up enough. There was airplanes on Sunday.
DWRB likes to railroad me. He likes to railroad. He said, "Get out of the way, sir. It's time for trains." I said, "Sir, get off trains. Anything but trains, sir. Please, anything. I'm begging you. I'm begging you, sir. I don't beg often. You know, I don't like to beg. I'm not really much of a beggar, but you know, occasionally you got to do it. You got to get down on your knees." Oh, wait, whoa! I don't know about all that. You know, they say the man crawled into the office on his knees, but they don't know what he did. But anyway.
Well, outside of that, I mean, like, these things are pretty, like, well, man, you had a full crash out, and I'm like, well, anyways, like, it's like, well, but these things are pretty, like, come on, folks. I mean, trains are pretty cool, right? I mean, basically everybody loves trains. I mean, everybody who's somebody, you know, like Walt Disney loved trains. You know, that's why there's these railroads around all of the Disneys, just because he loved them so much. And, you know, I mean, there were so many actors that love trains. I mean, there's so many of them out there. You know, there's that one guy, Matthew, from Impractical Jokers. I think his name's Murr. He has a whole model railway in his basement. It's like 3,000 square feet. Did you know that?
Hey, Murr, go out there and prank him. I have these trains in my basement.
That makes Murr tonight's big loser.
You're going to take him down to the basement and show him the trains.
Hey, there's trains in my basement. Like, oh man, but still, these are some of my favorites. But yeah, model railroading is pretty cool. And I saw Rick Hagewood say, "I bet you have model trains and that you play with them." Well, I mean, yeah, and also to answer the second part, of course not. Why not? I mean, like, if you get them, they move. I mean, it's kind of neat. You know, you can model prototype operations with them, and that's what I do. At least a little bit that I do it. I'm trying to make an actual layout for them though, because right now it's just tracks on the table. But yeah, you know, like, that's what you do. It's a hobby. It's kind of like people who fly RC planes or drive the little RC cars. You know, it's same kind of hobby. You gotta have a hobby. If you don't have a hobby, then who are you really? I mean, like, you know, what do you do in your free time? Not that I really have any free time. I mean, I do that like 1 hour every week. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 5. And he said, "Good evening, enforcers and LSA, and one for the chat on me." And we will grab one, Robert. And thank you very much for that $5 support. And the live chat question is going to go to none other than Solus, and who said, "Do you think this whole mission is to weaken China and Russia? And we already know China has eyes on Taiwan. So what's your opinion?"
I'm doubting it, actually, at this point, because of the tweet that just came out. And I'm going to have to tell you, I have a very negative opinion of what's going to happen here tomorrow, but we'll have to wait and see what happens over this whole event. But I have a feeling that we're about to start offshoring more industries to China and basically, you know, kind of selling out the country's strategic interests. So we'll have to see. But we'll find out. But a big thanks to you once again for sponsoring our live chat, Robert. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Be Like Music. And they said, "Good evening, LSA."
And a good evening to you, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Tisoka, who said, "Hopefully everybody had a great day. And America is the best country in the world. And don't let the people tell you otherwise." Oh, yeah, the country is great. Like, the country still is the best on the planet, even with the troubles it's having. But you know, occasionally leaders, they come in and they're not always the best for the country, unfortunately. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, I would have to say, like, you know, I complain a lot about the United States, but I would never want to be a citizen of another country. To be entirely honest with you all, the only other country I could ever see myself being like, yeah, that'd be a country I live in, would be Canada. But that's only because it's basically just the United States in a different country. Like, Canada and the United States are so culturally analogous. You can take a Canadian and plop them in America, and most people would think they're an American, and you can take an American and throw them into Canada, not Canada, and most people would think that they're a Canadian. But outside of that, I'm really proud of the United States of America. It's a country with a rich history and amazing people, amazing peoples, really, that have united together under the American banner as Americans, and have done so many great things throughout their history, and continue to do great things even now, regardless of the idiocy that continues to permeate within the government. I always like to say, you can always be incredibly angry of the government or incredibly distrusting of the government, but be proud to be an American simultaneously, because while elected officials don't seem to have a brain in their head anymore. I can tell you that the country itself is full of an amazing group of people and really worth being proud of. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Siri, who said, great job, Enforcer Bros. And thank you for your reporting, excuse me, by the way. It said, in memory of LSA legends CME4PC, Marie LSA, Panama Floyd, and Ukraine defenders.
And a big thanks to you for support, and thank you so much for the memory of all. And also, did Panama Floyd pass away at some point?
I was about to ask that because I was like, wait a minute, I hadn't heard about this one, but I was like, maybe I didn't hear about it or something. I thought Panama Floyd was still around.
Yeah, I thought Panama Floyd just stopped watching the channel at some point, like took a break, and I don't think that they ever came back. But did they pass away? Like let us know, because I haven't heard about that one yet. I've heard of Marie LSA. I mean, generally assumed deceased. We never got, I don't think, full confirmation on that, but we generally assume, because the last time we heard from Marie LSA, she wasn't in the greatest of health. And then we do know that CME4PC passed away because Ken notified all of us of CME4PC's unfortunate passing. But I got to say, thank you so much for keeping them in memory. But I would like to make sure that Panama Floyd is actually passed, because from what I remember, I think Panama Floyd's still around. But hopefully we find out that is the case, because I hate to hear that he passed. That'd be the first time I heard of it. But a big thanks to you for support. I hope that this addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Give Up Now once again, who said, elbows up to our Canadian brothers, Maple Leafs.
Hey, and a big elbows up to the Canadian brothers. I love Canada. Canada's a really cool country. They have beautiful scenery, a really interesting history, actually, for how little people live in Canada for its size. And it's also just a really interesting country. A lot of rich history up there, much like there is here in America. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I got to say, if there's any country that we can count on, folks, we can count on Canada. Canada is always a cool one. And I think that Canada is a great country. But with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ulf Hednar, who said, do any of the Gulf states have minesweepers? And if so, how long for them to start using them to clear out the Strait of Hormuz?
I think that some of them have minesweepers, but it would take a while. The strait would have to be cleared out of most kinetic threats that could hit the minesweepers for them to be able to go in and do their work. So I hope that does address that well, and a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Give Up Now once again. And let's see here. I said, late to the party. I don't know what this last part means, though, right here. But thank you very much.
What does that read like a mafia thing? It's like, Chimito Buffy El Bon Bonanzo. Like, it's like, I don't know what that means. It's like, it reads like a mafia hit.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but thank you very much, Give Up Now, for that $5 support, and we do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from Max Shabai. He said, it looks like we're offering more technology transfer to Commie China and taking stupid to a new level. Shaking my head.
If that is the case, I don't know what we're going to be doing, but it sounds like we're going to be trying to increasing some form of trade relations, which means, well, most likely offshoring more industry into China. I don't know if it's going to include that specifically, but if it does, I don't even know how in the world to make comments on that without it sounding like an absolute crash out at this point.
Just leave it be and let's see how it turns out.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory, and thank you very much, Game Theory, as well. Once again, they said accountant, code name for stripper. I ain't never heard that one. That's a new one on me. I ain't heard that.
I ain't heard of that one. I don't know what kind of accountants you've been working with, but big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Give Up Now once again. He said, Big Brother furrows a brow.
Big Brother, you mean like from 1984? Oh, strong and peaceful, wise. But also another thing. You know another thing that's funny, Matthew? TMZ, I don't know if you saw this one, but they asked the Secretary of Defense, do you see that clip? Like where TMZ asked, the Department of War is really all about bringing peace. So should we rename the Department of War to the Department of Peace? And it was a reference to 1984 because the Department of War for INGSOC was the Department of Peace, which waged war. That was, the irony of it. And then the Secretary of Defense said, that's actually a really good idea. I'm actually going to have to run that by the president because it really is our objective to create peace. And I was like, oh my God. I was like really missing the mark on this. It's kind of like how the former Homeland Security Secretary literally read a quote out of the book 1984 when she was resigning her position. and read something like it's because of scary men like us in the dark that keep innocent people like you in the light or something like that. And it was literally from the torture part of the book, where the main character was being tortured by the agent who gave him the Goldstein book or something. It's like, you can't make these sorts of references more on the nose at that point, That's a rough one. But anyways, with that,
I feel like they want to put us in the cow stables or the cow stable. You know how they have them eating out the hay buckets and stuff and drinking out the water buckets? I feel like that's where they're trying to get us to.
you're going to eat some bugs, and you're going to like you're going to live in some pod, and you're going to eat some bugs.
You peasant bastards will own nothing, and you'll like it.
And please, we're starved. I don't give a shit. Starve for all I care. I'm here now.
Please, can we have just a grain of rice? No, shut up. No grains of rice.
We're looking for increased famine. Like not. Oh man, let's see.
Rapid shortages.
Well, let me think of something that rhymes with famine. We're looking for increased famine, not least costly spamming. But anyways,
oh my goodness.
Oh man, and it's true too. It's true. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Clifford Farmer, and thank you very much, Clifford, for that 5. He said, my 62-year-old wife pays $1,300 per month for health insurance. My goodness. He said, so how great is the country? What is the plan for healthcare? I say Medicare for all. I can't even say how much I pay. Like I don't even want to say it because, of course, that'll sort of like give away my income and stuff. I don't like to put all that stuff out in the public, just for OPSEC reasons. But I pay an insane amount for health insurance. For my age, at my age of 25, I would imagine that the algorithm probably shows I'm not going to have too many health issues because I don't really have any health issues. So I pay probably way more than I should be. I pay what my family used to pay for family health care insurance 10 years ago, which is insane. Because really, honestly, truthfully, I truly cannot afford the health insurance, but I have it anyway, just in case something goes bad wrong. I don't want to get in medical debt for the rest of my life. But yeah, health insurance is screwed up beyond belief, to say the least. Somebody my age should not be paying what I'm paying for health insurance, especially when I never even use it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, I'd have to say it's pretty bad, but I mean that doesn't make the country not great. It just means that it has problems that need to be fixed. Just because a country has problems doesn't mean it's not great. A country could be great and have problems like that, and I'm also paying a lot for health insurance too. So I'd have to say it definitely is an issue. I feel like folks, the best workaround for that one would have been instead of the whole Obamacare thing that was made out of it, which is a pretty broken system if you look at it for how much people are having to pay. What would have made a lot more sense would be, because the whole reason that they did that, folks, by the way, was for the uninsurable, because there were people out there that were so high risk, no insurance company would give them a policy because they had so many health issues. Wouldn't the better thing to have done through that by that one, folks, would be to have everyone else operate on privatized insurance? But if you could prove a case to the government that no insurance company would insure you because you were high risk, according to them, then you could get put on a special government health insurance program that would be able to subsidize your insurance. That way everyone isn't paying exorbitantly high prices, just by and large, like everyone is right now. I feel like that would have been a much better option and would have been able to stratify it to where everybody wouldn't have been like hemorrhaging money for basic health insurance like we are at this point. But I feel like that certainly needs a fix. Weirdly enough, though, nobody wants to fix it up there in Congress at all, because I don't think they understand how to even try and fix it, which, at some point
they created a healthcare savings account or something that has like some tax benefits to it or something. So instead of fixing it, they just set up like a new bank account.
Well, that's pretty stupid. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from DWRB once again, and thank you, good sir, for the second support of the night. He said, the man Matt wants some variety, eh? Oh, I mean, if you're offering. He said, planes, trains, and automobiles. Rumors say the Dodge Viper is returning with the V10. Also, thoughts on the new duck-bill USPS vehicles, LSA. Now, see, that's good right here, DWRB. Now you're speaking my language right now. I hadn't heard about that Dodge Viper returning with the V10. The old Dodge Viper was legendary, but also for an actual car, it wasn't really that great because, of course, it was a little bit rear-end biased, a little bit heavy, so it would spin out and stuff. But it was pretty cool though. It's kind of like the a Porsche Carrera GT, also kind of a bit of a death trap, to be perfectly honest, but also legendary too. Like as long as you're not driving like a fool, you should be okay. But it sounded very good. Those V10s, Dodge Viper, Porsche Carrera GT sounds fantastic. The new duckbill USPS vehicles, they say they designed this in coordination with the postmasters. So this is apparently what they wanted. So it's very utilitarian, but they didn't put much work into the design of the thing when it comes to like actually looking cool. But I guess it's more about utilitarian use. That's probably more important. But it kind of looks a little silly. It looks like something out of the Seuss or out of Dr. Seuss's books. What say you?
You know what this looks like? It looks like one of the cars from the movie Up.
Yeah, it kind of does. It looks like something out of a cartoon.
I gotta say, I think this thing is heinous. Like, I actually think this thing is atrocious looking. Like, it's Pixar looking at. Like, man, honestly, it is Pixar looking at. This thing is terrible looking. I don't like it at all, but the post office has such insane requirements for their vehicles. Like, they have to last, like, 600,000 miles without any oil changes and extreme stuff. Like, I'm exaggerating, but extreme stuff like that. So they have to make them ultra survivable, ultra long-term, very low maintenance, low cost. And then they also have a million requirements for driver visibility, driver safety. Like, look at the bumper on the front of this thing. That bumper is so thick, folks, that the SWAT team could use that for a battering ram through a brick wall. Like, it's unbelievably thick, and they have one at the front and the back, so that way they ever get in a collision, they can just replace the bumper because the bumper's so thick and big and built so well, it really doesn't damage the vehicle or it makes the driver not get as injured in a crash.
Real quick, what's the horsepower on it?
Like insanely small. Like I don't know the actual amount, but I think it's like 60 or something. Let me see here if we can get a Wikipedia on that. Here it is. So it's a 2-liter. It's a 2-liter with
2-liter.
It has a electronic range of 70 miles.
So it says here, the old GM Iron Duke, which was the one, the LLV, the old one, was 110 to 150 horsepower. But apparently the new one, they don't have a horsepower number on the new one, but apparently it's a Ford turbocharged 4-cylinder EcoBoost. So I would imagine that's about 150 to 200 horsepower because I think that's usually what those 4-cylinder EcoBoosts usually make is about 150 to 200. So it's obviously not made to race. It's more about like keeping the thing. Also, by the way, it's turbocharged. I don't know about turbocharging something for like long-term reliability like that. Usually you don't want something turbocharged for that. You'd want something naturally aspirated, but I guess maybe who knows with that. I wouldn't have turbocharged it.
I believe in Grumman LLV supremacy.
Grumman, man, not Grumman.
Grumman. Like, whatever, man.
Grumman.
Ain't nothing like a Diddy mailman. Like, but I believe in Grumman LLV supremacy. I think that these things, like, they're weird looking, but I think that they're a lot cooler looking than the new ones. Also, they're nostalgic. I remember these from my childhood, and I always thought that they were really cool.
Man, I feel like some of these things were straight piped at one point by some of the post office. Like some of those post office, I could have sworn some of these things right here sounded like it was coming like straight off the manifold, like the exhaust
Man, honestly,
sound. I'm like, I don't know if they cut the exhaust off these things at some of these post office. But I mean, I remember one of these things was out there in Alabama. That thing sounded like a straight up like horror film when it would come down the road. Like it was so loud. Like it sounded like it was straight engine. Like there was no muffler, no cat. It was just straight engine noise. And I think they might have done that out there. I think they might have.
I think they might have, yeah. And also that was like kind of a little common in like Montgomery too, like down there when we were growing up there as kids. That was kind of common too. Like these things were kind of like busted, honestly. Like they hardly maintained any of them. But that was kind of what was kind of neat about them is that they just ran no matter what, and they were designed to do that by Grumman. So like these, honestly, I think these things are neat. And I saw someone say they're still around. Yeah, they're still around, but not for long. They're all going to be replaced by the new one eventually, this NGDV. And I just don't like the look of them. But I have a feeling it'll grow on me eventually. And when these things get retired, I'll be like, oh, dang, they're going away. Like because everything always grows on everyone eventually. But anyways, a big thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep running and giving us a rabbit hole other than trains. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Ulf Hednar, and thank you very much, Ulf Hednar, for that support. He said a certain president got impeached for for some individual lady who showed up at his office under the desk. But I also sadly can't read the other part. But it is true that one president did have a little hanky panky going on in the Oval Office, and that looks minor compared to some of the stuff that's happened since that fellow left office. That looks like nothing. It's like hell, they could let that go compared to what's happening today. That's minor stuff. It's like get away with a little bit of that, but a little bit of this. But enforcer, what say you?
I guess you could say that president was definitely getting ahead in the policies. Oh!
Oh man, I'll tell you what.
Oh man. Oh jeez. That's crazy back in the day, folks. When like the biggest things in the country were like, is the president getting a little bit of a head in policy here, or is the president wearing a tan suit there? And did Bush just say something else that's really weird and hilarious for like the 90th time? It's really interesting that used to be like the biggest complaints that people had in the country about presidents, and like their policies kind of came second, really, because there wasn't really a lot of an issue there, because like the policies weren't horrendous. I mean, they might not be great, but they weren't openly terrible. And then we went from that to this, like over the past really 3 terms. Well, honestly, really just the past 2 terms. That's subject to opinion.
Could you imagine if that happened in the modern day, like what happened with that president happened right now? I mean, that president came out and tried to cover it up. He was like, I don't know that woman. That's like, he tried to lie about it, which is where he went wrong. If you did that today and just came out and said, yes, sir, that was me, and that was definitely what I did, and I got no qualm about it. Today, everybody would be like, that's right, we should have more of this. It's like people would be supporting that today if you came out and like just owned it. Like they would be supporting it.
If I was the president and I had that kind of authority and beautiful women was lining up left and right, I begin someone would say that. Like you could put money on it, basically. Like there'd be people out there saying that right now. Because I mean, look at the whole thing with everything else. Like how people came to the defense of that in literally overnight, just did a 180. Can't even mention what that is, but y'all get the picture with that. And because I mean, basically, folks, at this point, like I'll be honest, the country on either end has like if you're political, of course, most people down the middle have like moral standards and everything. But the far right political extremes, they just don't have moral standards. It's basically just whatever their political party has done and has been exposed to do, and then they're fine with it. It could be anything at this point, and they'll be fine with it the next day once they find out about it. But anyways, with that, we're on.
Did that guy ever get caught? Like, how did he get caught? Did somebody walk in on him, or somebody like snitch, or like how did that come about like really quickly?
Hold up, I gotta go find out. Like, let's see. Blue wings.
Because I'm like, somebody must have snitched, or either somebody like happened to like witness something.
How did they get caught? Oh, so it was apparently a coworker that recorded telephone conversations and then leaked it to the independent counsel. So she got snitched on.
Oh wow! So somebody was snitching. Dang.
Oh, you like how I use that cigar? And then that one coworker's like, "Oh, I got the dirt. Like I'm going to report this to special counsel."
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like somebody else might have been involved.
What do you mean?
Sounds like some possible jealousy or something. It's like usually that kind of stuff right there doesn't make it to the big screen. Like usually people are just like, whatever. Like, there's some office drama or gossip or something like that. It doesn't usually make it to the big screen unless somebody gets a little jelly.
I mean, that's true. Also, I saw someone say something about we're talking about certain things versus consensual. Well, I mean, I have to correct it here. Adultery, technically, in most state statutes, is illegal. It's just that they don't enforce that anymore. So, I mean, technically, like everything that we're talking about here is an illegal act of some degree, no matter what we're talking about. But it's just that nowadays it's not looked at as badly as it used to, so they don't enforce that statute anymore and charge people on it. But they did get him on, I believe, lying under, what was it, Matt? He was lying in an official congressional hearing or something like that.
I can't remember.
But anyways, I can't remember. I don't know what I said. But anyways, then we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Solus, who puts in a 4. And thank you, Solus, once again. They said we need to be ready for China.
I would agree. We definitely do need to be ready for them. And so a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Stable Coffee, who said the home of the brave.
And I got to thank you for the support, Stable Coffee. And I'd have to say, we need brave people these days. We do. And a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Colfax. He said, it bold of you to assume that they want a democracy. They don't know what they want.
They don't know what they want. Like Matthew's right with that. They don't know what they want. It's
So
up
you
to,
tell them what they want.
and then if they don't do that, you vote them out. Like you don't lie to yourself and say, "Well, I had no other option but to vote them in." You vote them out. You just keep voting them out. That's the answer, everybody. You just vote them out. And then you create a lot of public outrage. Because you see, folks, if the public operates like a peaceful assembly and they make it very clear that they're going to exercise their democratic rights, and you say, I don't really like what this guy is doing, I want him gone, and if you don't get the guy gone, I'm going to make sure that when the next election comes around, you're not going to be around either. And then that puts enough pressure on the political system that it runs properly. Problem is, these days, nobody does that, and everybody just goes, well, I mean, they're screwing the country over, but I guess I'll vote for them again. And it's like, well, that's why the country's running in the ground. But a big thanks to you for support, and with that, we're on the next one.
We also have here a $2 support from Chickadee, and thank you, Chickadee, for that support. It said, George Custer, hero of Gettysburg.
And then he died at the Battle of Little Bighorn. That guy was kind of obsessive about his appearance. Like he was not really the greatest leader, not really the greatest, really. But a big thanks to your support, and that is actually true. Custer was at the Battle of Gettysburg and was involved heavily in the U.S. Civil War. But with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Solus once again. They said, love LSA. And it was probably a NATO country putting an explosive on that ship that blew up.
And I thank you so much for the support, Solus. And I think that probably was the case. And I love the LSA as well. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 1 from Corey and a 1 from Plazanth. And thank you, Corey and Plazanth, for that support. And we do appreciate that. And we also have a 1 from Robert Planting. He said, be well and rested and be sharp and get your news here.
And thank you so much for the support, Robert Planton. I definitely agree. People ought to get that news right here, right now. And so big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to get on into the Morse code decoders. And due to being unfortunately overtime at this point, the 3 final live chats of the night. So Matthew, what do we got?
So what do we have here? We have the Morse code decoders, the entire roster. Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Royal Fluffness, Kush, Kovateric, Cy, and Brian. They said the Morse code says, I ran out here acting like it's Mission Impossible and then getting greased by Kuwait. LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that done on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all on getting that correct time and time again. Truly an amazing and profound thing, an incredible thing. And I got to say that it's a wonderful thing to know that the Morse code decoders continue to get it correct time and time again. And I also saw, before we move on, that Hangolf said Custer got all of his men killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Yeah, he did. Actually, it was a woeful incompetence on the end of General Custer that got his whole army wiped out. But another thing that's also really interesting is that a lot of people always think, folks, throughout most of U.S. history, that the military outgunned private citizens. But during that period of time, when the Battle of Little Bighorn happened, private citizens actually outgunned the military, interesting enough, in small arms, because the military would not introduce lever actions into the army because they were scared that if they did, a whole bunch of kind of hardly trained privates were just going to start unloading basically entire tubes worth of ammo on whoever they're shooting at, and they would run out of ammo in a couple of minutes. So they gave them these things called the Springfield trapdoors, which were single-shot rifles of a high caliber. It's a 45-70, but they would give them Springfield trapdoors, which were single shots, and you'd have to reload it after every single shot. So not only was there bad tactics and strategy at play in the Battle of Little Bighorn, but actually they were outgunned by the Native Americans because the Native Americans all had lever action, so they had a superiority of fire in terms of the volume of fire that they could lay down in a period of time. And then the Army was working with poor tactics, strategy, and also single shots, which also to a degree doomed them in the battle for the larger part, just being outgunned, basically. But a lot of people don't know that at that time, private citizens largely just outgunned the military every day of the week. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to BBB, who said, what are the odds that Russia or Iran supply the South American cartels with shot heads?
it's fairly decent, actually. Like, as long as there's some sort of illegal trade to be had and they could benefit themselves and put the United States and our allies at a detriment, they certainly could sell those to the cartels, or they could give them the knowledge and know-how to be able to make them. So the chance of that is actually pretty decent. So I hope that does address that the best I can. We are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Mary Jacobs. She said, which has a better chance of a peace deal? First, Russia-Ukraine or USA-Iran? And I hope you both had a restful day off and LLT, LSA. And honestly, between the two of those options there, honestly, neither one of them really has a chance of a peace deal. Iran will never reach a deal that's acceptable until they are basically driven to destruction. And Russia and Ukraine, I mean, the one thing that the U.S. administration is saying that's true, Putin and Zelensky absolutely hate each other, like legitimately. Like that's not just something they do just for the cameras. They actually hate each other very, very much. So until one of those leaders either leaves office or something like that, that situation is never going to have a peace deal either. And honestly, I mean, Ukraine should make a peace deal with Russia because they're the ones that invaded. So until Putin leaves office one way or another, it's never going to have one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree with that. There's never going to be a peace deal in Ukraine until Putin probably drops dead, or Zelensky does, which Putin will probably do that before Zelensky. As far as the two, though, if the U.S. would actually fight the war in Iran properly and not like a fool on the larger level, we could actually end that one a lot quicker than the war in Ukraine would. And that's not anytime soon. That'd probably still be a good while from now, but it could end quicker than the war in Ukraine. But due to ego and incompetence, and also then just diehard stubbornness from one end or another on both conflicts, you're never going to really see an end to them anytime soon from what we're seeing right now. But I would still say the war in Iran could end quicker if we fought it well. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be none other than AF Kaplan. He said, could the IRGC attack of the Kuwait island have been a feint to distract from something else they were going to do or planning to do?
Not really, because we didn't see anything over the course of this whole week that would have been a necessary distraction, because the distraction would only really work if it was something else aimed at Kuwait, and we haven't really seen much of anything aimed at Kuwait, rather than a couple of intermittent drone attacks, which really wouldn't distract the air defense forces with a raid, because air defense forces really can't fight against or be relocated to defend against a ground raid on the island. So I didn't really see anything that was a part of a distraction attempt. It looked to be a pretty straightforward sort of a raid and an attack sort of an attempt that failed due to it being called by the Kuwaiti Army. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to have 20,000 of you all here at the peak and to have 154,000 people watch this stream before it ended. I've got to say that it's something else to know that for years we have continued to cover the news for many people, and still, to this day, are covering news for millions of people every single month that tune into the channel. We thank you, every single one of y'all, for y'all's time tonight, and hope that y'all will join us tomorrow for the next 24 hours of news when we run this stream again at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And if there is a short video to be made, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And also a huge thanks to the chunk of folks that were here tonight. It was a lot of people. It was 150-some thousand. I'm trying to get to the dashboard. It was 154,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. We appreciate all of you very much, that whopping amount of people, for choosing us as your news source once again. And we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly Warning stream, and maybe for a midday short war video tomorrow as well. If there is enough news to cover, middle of the day, which hopefully there is, because we like to keep that schedule up. And recently, we have not been keeping it up once again. But hopefully there will be one tomorrow. But in the meantime, though, thank you all once again. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Army shall